This is CoCoTALK, the nation's leading live talk show featuring the Tandy color computer, with your host, Mr. Gameplay Goodness himself, Stevie Stroud. All right, and here we are, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Welcome to episode 28 of CoCoTALK. This is the all things Tandy Assembly edition of CoCoTALK. This is the Tandy Assembly Pre-Game show. This is the Christmas Eve before Tandy Assembly, if you will. And we're actually very honored to have with us right now two esteemed visitors. Number one, we need to order them in order of significance. So first and foremost, we have David Ladd, podcasting celebrity who just appeared on the CoCo Crew podcast. So welcome, David Ladd.
Hello.
You honor us with your presence, sir. The elevation of our show has been lifted to a whole new level, so thank you so much for that. And then, of course, we have the godfather of all things retro, Mr. John Linville, is with us as well, host of the CoCo Crew podcast, one of the founders of Tandy Assembly, host of Retro Challenge, just all-around good-looking guy. I'm not sure if your mic is on or if you're just holding it all back there, John, but welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hello, hello. And then the rest of the room here we'll just go around the room here. Wearing a very lovely royal blue CoCoTALK t-shirt, we have Mark Overholser. No shameful plug there. Richard Lorbieski of Boyson Tech is with us. And Grant Leighty is with us. We have Bill Noble A. We have L. Curtis Boyle. We have Ron Delvaux. Barry Nelson, and all the way from the UK, I believe Ciaran Anscomb is trying to join the call right now. So welcome everybody to CoCoTALK, and thanks for being here on Tandy Assembly's Eve, sort of. Weekend
Thank you for having me.
Yep. Hello everyone, and if you have not gotten enough floppy talk on our show, you can check out David's interview.
I gotta say, it was an incredible segment, because even though I've heard David speak to this at length more than once, hearing it again, it actually was enjoyable. And then I'm not even saying that to be sarcastic. It was a very enjoyable segment. So great job on the CoCo Crew, and great job on David Ladd. And thanks for showcasing David, giving him some of the proper recognition he deserves.
That we never give him here.
I was going to say it was John's idea.
You guys are just letting all that beautiful content go to waste.
So here we are. John, can you verify, can you confirm or deny if we're showing up on the Tandy Assembly stream as well?
Look over there. Yes, we appear to be.
Okay, good. So we are multicasting right now, also on the Tandy Assembly YouTube channel. There is a link to that channel in the description of this live stream. So next weekend, CoCoTALK will not be airing in its regular format or at its regular time, but we will be streaming all of the events directly from the Tandy Assembly speaking area, the speakers area, the stage, whatever you want to call it, presentation forum. We'll be live streaming all of those events, and Saturday night we'll have kind of a round table, which will be a live version similar to CoCoTALK, but it's not going to just be the CoCo folks. We'll have the CoCo Crew, we'll have the Trash Talkers, we'll have Randy Kindig from Floppy Days, and as many people from Tandy Assembly who want to be part of the conversation too. So that should be a nice little fun live discussion next weekend. So definitely looking forward to that. And so, yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about this week is Tandy Assembly. Much like this show started in anticipation of CoCo Fest, we now have two exciting things to talk about each year, and this is the one. So of us in the room right now, I know John Linville will be there at Tandy Assembly. Richard's going to be there. Grant is going to be there. I am going to be there. Who else is going to be at Tandy Assembly that's on the panel right now?
I will not.
Okay.
Yeah. I will still be working overtime that weekend, so good thing I didn't book it.
Sadly, I won't be able to make it.
Yes.
Same here.
But the legend of David Ladd and his floppy knowledge will live on. So I actually learned something because I thought a sector was a physical portion of a disk. I didn't realize it was kind of software defined. I always assumed a sector was a hard-coded thing that was part of the construction of the process. And so that was interesting. Actually
yeah, well, on the Apple II, they used to call them soft sector because they didn't use a timing hole. It was all based on just how you wrote the disk out.
Yep. Actually, any disk that only has a single index hole is a soft sectored floppy. There are disks that have multiple index holes, and those are hard sectored floppies. None of the systems that we would typically deal with would use them. There's, I think, some old CPM systems and some other systems that use hard sectored disks.
Yeah, the ones I saw were from IBM. They were the 8-inch ones. Like some of the System 36 machines had those.
Yeah, they had them. So, and yeah, as you rotate those disks, you'll actually see that there are like multiple holes, multiple index holes punched in the disk. If you rotate a color computer 5 1/4-inch floppy, you'll see that there's only one single hole. And even though it uses that index hole, it's still a soft sectored disk because it uses that hole once, but then the rest of the sectoring is set up by the software.
Interesting.
Yeah. Though, as Mark can probably attest, the original Apple doesn't even use the index hole, if I remember, at all. It's totally based on software timing.
Totally software.
I can attest to that as well. That is correct.
There is no encoder, optical encoder in there. Yeah.
That's interesting. So that's something I just kind of took for granted, that I assumed it was a physical thing, but it is obviously it's a kind of a logical, dynamic thing. So that's
and oh God,
cool.
we're talking about floppies again.
Yeah. Well, listen.
Yeah,
that's...
and the other handy thing is that that's why those double-sided punches worked so well for the Apples, but the IBM compatibles to make a flippy, you had to go through the pain in the rump part of adding that extra punch through the shielding of the floppy so that the index could be read.
Yep.
That is interesting.
Yeah, the Apples just required a right enable notch on the other side of the disk.
Yeah.
But a color computer, you can make a flippy, but you have to punch the right notch, and you have to punch another index hole read on the other side. Even though
sides.
Up sector floppy, it still uses that one index pulse per rotation.
That would be on the left side of Ron's head there.
And yeah, that's cool. Retro Innovations, Jim Brain says that North Star used a 10 sector hard sector. Sadly, save them if you find them. You can't buy them anymore. So yeah. So floppy talk's been a big thing, and it's sweeping the nation. And if you haven't gotten floppy fever, go out and get yourself some today.
It's just about ready to become its own spin-off show, I think.
We are working on that. I'm in talks with David Ladd, but since he is courting some of the more elite shows on the podcast networks now, his asking price has gone up considerably.
Yeah, I've seen his new rider there. All the stuff he wants in his dressing room is just insane.
Remove the brown M&Ms and 72 virgins and all kinds of stuff this guy's asking for now. So.
Custom 8-inch floppy drive, all kinds of things.
So I heard a very interesting comparison recently when I was listening to the TRS-80 Trash Talk. And so when they mentioned CoCoTALK, there was a really interesting analogy there where the CoCo Crew podcast was much like a news magazine, and CoCoTALK is very similar to The View. And so I thought that was...
Which one of us is Whoopi?
Yeah. Well, it's obviously not David Ladd.
So that was good timing, Steve. You did that right when Curtis was taking a drink. I saw him almost lose it.
And and a better analogy too, at least for the CoCo Crew side, was when Boise kind of referred to them as the NPR of podcasting, which is great. Great analogy, and I've heard and rightfully so. The CoCo Crew is synonymous with like the Rainbow magazine, but even when there was a rainbow, there were other magazines. So we can be one of the other magazines. One of the will be the National Enquirer of color computer information. This week we saw Bigfoot flying a UFO.
Yeah, they have a much more structured format than this is all free form and just talk.
You actually prepare for shows, that kind of stuff. To have a subject list.
Show
we
notes.
just can't be bothered.
Yes.
Imagine that.
Yes. Yeah. There's Ciaran. Welcome, Ciaran.
Hey.
So let's now that we've kind of introduced everybody here, let's do a brief. I want to do a quick feedback and look at what has happened in our world this past week here. So let's look at some feedback that we've received recently on some of the videos, and so. This person here has commented on a couple of CoCoTALK episodes now. His name is Dan Yalty. And on episode 19, where we were talking about CoCo hardware, he was saying, great computer back in the day, too bad, rest in peace, Radio Shack. It says Raspberry Pi is good to run an emulator. I think an emulator is a better way to go. New hardware cost-wise isn't so good, my 2 cents anyways. And then later on, he was responding to another video talking about FPGA boards, and he's posting a link here which I haven't had a chance to look at yet, but he also has some more thoughts here on making a new CoCo. He says, in order to make a true CoCo 4, I think we need to move beyond 8 bits, even if it's just the 16 bits. Doing it in emulation makes more sense. We could emulate something like a 68,000 series is what he's saying here. Higher video modes. Someone does not step up and make it happen soon, it never will. So he may or may not be aware of some of the multiple projects that are already going on with lots of different CoCo hardware. Now, as far as last week's episode, which I really enjoyed, ease of use, we've gotten 112 views, and that's a little bit lower than we usually get, but also bear in mind we're on a new channel now. So Evan Wright has joined us. Hey, Evan, how are you? And so we're broadcasting on a new channel, and I don't know that everybody knows to go here to get the replays, and it is what it is, right? As far as downloads right now, this is a nice new milestone now, 1,700 downloads and change we've reached on the audio versions, and this is what I find to be interesting, is what is our most listened to episodes right now? Actually, Oz K-Fest is our most downloaded episode. Episode 26 coming in at number 2. Nick Marentes, Popstar Pilot. Look at this. Floppy Talk is number 4. Floppy Talk episode is in the top 4.
And that's only going to go up now after the CoCo Crew.
Exactly. Yes, I'm going to say his asking price is gone up considerably. So a little bit of feedback from around the web there. Yeah, it's nice. Evan writes here, hey Evan, it's nice to be recognized by the community and by other people who are doing what you do, and I thought that was kind of cool. So this has been kind of a cool month for us, being kind of getting some airtime in other places. So later on I'll show the Glenside newsletter where they give us a nice little write-up on what CoCoTALK is. We were mentioned in the Trash Talk because we are going to be part of Tandy Assembly, so it's kind of be nice to be mentioned and to be, I guess, validated is a good word. I think John Linville's been very kind to give us some validation, and I liked the host discussion where they said, "Okay, well, how does the CoCo Crew feel about CoCoTALK?" Didn't see that one coming, but that was interesting to see that brought up, and basically everybody say,
"My spot."
Yeah. So, I think the great thing about this is that we are kind of both providing some content that can cross-pollinate these shows, because at least once a month now we'll be able to talk about what was discussed on the podcast, and that's going to help feed some content for us. And now at least some of the things that we're doing are now making their way to that podcast, which is a nice testament to Ron's Garage. It's a great segment. The things that you show off are, you got a nice collection. David Ladd and Floppy Talk. Great topic. So hopefully this will continue to help feed each other with content and some synergies. So.
Yeah, and I like the fact
Great
that they
stuff.
mentioned that like a platform that had way more computers sold than we did. Like the Commodore only has one podcast, so
Yeah.
the fact that we have two that are sustaining and actually still, I think, improving in numbers is a good sign.
Definitely.
Yep. More dedicated fans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rabid, I believe, is the correct term.
That's what I like most about that Computer Chronicles episode, is whatever year that dates back from, 90 or whatever. And that even then, all the CoCo users were crazy.
Yeah, that's right.
So why are you still holding on to this stuff? Well, we just like it, and, here we still are.
How does Stuart Chaffee put? He put something like people are still cuckoo about their CoCos or something along that line.
Something like that.
We got to find that soundbite, right?
Yeah, I have my main computer back in the day was always a Tandy color computer. I had computers I had before that, and I've had a number of computers I picked up after that, of course. But the Tandy was always my favorite. I actually didn't, back in its heyday, I never owned a Commodore 64. I have one in my retro computer collection now. I like it. It's a nice machine. Actually, it's a 128, a Commodore 128. It's a very nice computer. It's certainly got some hardware advantages as far as sound, for instance, over a color computer. The interesting thing is the programming environment. It's much harder to write stuff that is multitasking or relocatable on the Commodore because of its CPU structure. So, and each of the machines I've got in my retro collection has its things that it does well and other things it doesn't do so well.
Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the fun things about adulting at this point now is that we have a little bit more dispensable income than we had when we were younger, and a lot of things now you can afford. Like I got a TI 99.4A for $40. I would not have been able to purchase a TI for $40 when it was a new product, So you can sometimes pick up a deal. So the combination of having some money to burn and things being a little bit more affordable allow you to perhaps even experience things that you didn't have back in the day. And that was another great host discussion: is when is enough, and what are your rules and parameters for your hobby? And it can get out of control very easily. I have three things that help me. I have a financial limitation, I have a space limitation, and I have a wife. And between those three factors here, it definitely keeps things in check. So it's a fun thing to do. Everybody's going to consume the hobby the way that works for them. Some people will run an emulator. Some people will want to have real hardware. And how you do it's kind of up to you. The one thing you learn, because you can look at anybody on any retro group, you're never going to have the most toys, because somebody else is going to post up a photo of their wall of cartridges and new inbox collections, and everybody's got a bigger, better museum than the next person. So to think you're going to have the most toys, it's kind of unrealistic. So it shouldn't be a pissing contest. It should just be your thing that you do however you're able to do it,
Yeah, and I remember like Marty Goodman had multiple storage sheds all over his property loaded with CoCo stuff back in the day. So,
Gee.
I have certain machines I'm not really interested in for various reasons. I'm almost not interested in some of the other Tandys because there are limitations with their graphics. It's black and white, and the games and stuff that were produced on them. There's no color. They're very, very blocky, very low resolution graphics. So, to date, I have not added any of the other TRS-80s to my collection. So even though the CoCo is one of my favorite retro machines, the other Tandys not so much.
Are you talking about like a Model 134 type thing?
Yeah, I certainly used them back in the day. I never actually owned one. It was always a friend's or the one at the store or whatever. But yeah, Model 1, 3, and 4 series. I did at one point, and I sort of regret, but not so much letting it go, was I did own a Model, it was a 6000. It had been upgraded from a 16. and I actually used to run a bulletin board on it at one point. It was running the Xenix operating system, which was Unix. Unix. That thing was a beast.
Yeah, that was a dual CPU too, wasn't it? A Z80 and a 68000.
Yeah, it primarily used its 68,000 CPU in the mode where I was running it, which was running the Xenix SCO Xenix OS.
Yeah, and the Z80 was basically an I/O coprocessor at that point.
Yeah. Earlier in its when it was originally manufactured as a Model 2 in that line, the Z80 was the primary CPU, and it would run either CP/M or Tristos. I ended up letting it go. I sort of regret letting it go. I would, but the thing it ran very little in the way of games and stuff like that. It was basically a business machine. It did a very good job of running my bulletin board, but not much in the way of gaming content on it.
Right. Hey, John, how much time do you have? Are you pushed for time, so maybe we'll get you to talk more about the event before you have to go? Are you able to hang for a little bit?
I don't have any plans, so, I mean, I'll be here the whole time, more or less.
Okay, well, I'm going to
say...
Go ahead,
just insert there, if you want to learn more about the Tandy 6000 Xenix, Peter Satinsky will have a display of that and the next week at this time at Tandy Assembly. So come on out.
Yeah, I've gleaned a little knowledge by listening to the Trash Talkers. It is interesting. He's a good good resource, for knowledge and experience and dedication to those systems, especially the 2000s and the 16, I think, and the Model 2 and the Model 16. He's an advocate.
Yeah, Model 12 was in there too, if I remember.
Yeah,
a
mini version.
Well, it was like more the follow-on to the 2, I guess. And then you could turn the 12 into a 16. And I can't tell you the real difference between the 16 and the 6000 other than the labels on the outside. But
it's a bigger number. They could charge more.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to run a commercial, and in this episode, we're going to be running a lot of spots for Tandy Assembly too. We're going to be running spots for all the people who are sponsoring Tandy Assembly. So every time we take a commercial break, it will have not only my annoying plug, but we're going to have a little sponsor thank you plug and a little Tandy Assembly video as well. So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll be back in just a minute, folks.
For being a Tandy Assembly sponsor. Tandy Assembly would like to thank our sponsor, Retro Innovations. Retro Innovations is a producer and designer of Tandy color computer and general system products. Producer of the CoCo Flash multi-ROM emulator. The CoCo Flash offers 8 megabytes of ROM storage and supports large ROM images. It also includes a built-in Orchestra 90 compatible music synthesizer. For more details on this product and others, visit www.goforretro.com. That's www.go4retro.com. Thank you, Retro Innovations, for being a Tandy Assembly sponsor.
Hello, this is David Ladd, and you're watching Original Gamer Stevie Stroh.
What's going on, everybody? Original Gamer Stevie Stroh here, and when you are done with CoCoTALK, why not head on over to my YouTube channel and get your share of gameplay goodness. There you will find everything from the old school to the next gen. There are video game reviews, interviews, how-tos, and replays of CoCoTALK. So for all of your video game needs on YouTube, head on over to youtube.com/OG Stevie Stroh for your share of gameplay goodness today.
Radio Shack's store-wide manager's red tag sale is on now. We've slashed prices 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%. Save on famous Radio Shack hi-fi, car stereo, radios, toys, TV games, calculators, walkie-talkies, and CB radios. Look for the big red tag. Save like never before on these and literally hundreds of red tag specials. Hurry into Radio Shack today.
Every journey begins with a single step. Whether you bought it or inherited it, you'll always remember your first computer. The sense of wonder, the challenge, the excitement, the sense of accomplishment. For millions of people, that first computer was a Tandy computer from Radio Shack. Something new is coming. Introducing Tandy Assembly, the first gathering of its kind specifically for Tandy and Radio Shack computers. From the pocket computer to the Tandy 6000 and everything in between. If you began with the original TRS-80 computer, the color computer, business systems such as the Model 12, or any of the wide array of MS-DOS compatible laptops, desktops, and servers, we invite you to join us at Tandy Assembly in Chillicothe, Ohio, October 7th and 8th, 2017. Every step of the journey has a story. We invite you to share yours. Tandy Assembly.
I tell you what, that My Row is one talented mofo because everything he produces is just pure gold. And I got chills. Watching that gave me chills. It kind of is like, you know, the eve before CoCo Fest is kind of like Christmas Eve, and now before Tandy Assembly, we've got that Christmas Eve feeling all over again. It's pretty cool. It's a chance to get together with your fellow freaks and fly your freak flag, you know. Oh, speaking of freaks, Simon Jonassen has joined us. What a segue. Hey, Simon, the madman is here. All the way
could
from
someone fix my Facebook, please? I'm kind of getting moderated.
A commercial there for a contemporary product, which was Retro Innovations, and it's CoCo Flash. That's interesting. So, some of the software development, actually most of the software development for that with Jim, and it's a nice companion to, if you have a CoCo SDC. It basically does for ROM images what the CoCo SDC does for floppies.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I know you have spoken about it before, and we should probably try to do a proper demonstration of that sometime. Maybe if I see you out at an event again, we can record a video or we'll do a Skype thing. But yeah, it'd be great to properly demonstrate what the CoCo Flash can do, what it looks like, and how to load some of your own content onto. Nothing, you might already have all those videos out there, but yeah, it'd probably be good to maybe show those off one time. It's definitely a good product.
There's a video I've posted out on YouTube that shows it from, you know, a point of view of using the machine, you know, with the CoCo Flash in it. Once you've got the ROM images loaded into the CoCo Flash, how it holds ROM images and how you can launch multiple ROM images, etc. The programming a new image, that procedure has changed a couple times. I've made it a little bit more easy to use. There's that ease of use again. But
ease of use,
which is definitely important. But yeah, I had to. I've finally got that streamlined down to the point where at least it is a manageable procedure to add a new image in there. It has been for a while, and but I don't have any video showing that. How you add a new image onto it yet, but I do have something that on YouTube already that does show it, you know, in operation, playing a couple games off of it, etc. So
okay, yeah, maybe you and I can work on that sometime. We'll get together and maybe try to record something. That'd be kind of cool. Very, very cool. And John Strong is with us. Hey, John. Sorry about that. There's so many faces popping up in the Skype call here. How you feeling this week, John? Any better?
A little bit better.
Yeah.
Take it real easy.
Now, I don't recall the final outcome, but are you going to be at Tandy Assembly this weekend coming up too?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a sister getting married, so
right.
If I'm up to going anywhere, I have to do that.
Right.
I wish we had one of these assemblies for retro computers that's a little bit closer to my home state of Florida.
Yeah, well, we talked about that, and that might be something we could do, like a Florida fest or a Florida assembly at some point in time. There's we could definitely probably fill a Chuck E. Cheese or Steak and Shake or something, you know.
If only Florida was a large U.S. state.
That wasn't about to wash away.
Well, there's that.
Right.
We need to make sure that if we schedule any meeting for Florida, we don't do it during hurricane season.
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah, and then Bruce, Bill, and I have to organize a Western Canada one too.
Yeah, right.
Might just be the three of us sitting in a field somewhere.
Well, we might be able to get Neil in it.
I would suggest if we do a Florida meeting that we do it in the winter for two reasons. One, in the winter is not hurricane season, and it's basically, it's not rainy. We have good sunny weather, etc., and we'll probably attract a lot of people to come down to that meeting just because of the weather.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where the snowbirds come to Florida in the winter, because our winters get to sometimes a brisk 70 degrees.
Well, we can do it in California, too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that might be something. It would probably end up, because of the size, it would probably be more like a club meeting than a festival, but still, that wouldn't be bad, just a little Florida gathering. It could be done. Vince Tran is close to me. He's about a half hour from me. You are down south. There's a couple people down south. There's a bunch of people up north. Michael Brandt is up there. John T. Robbs is up north. But yeah, off the top of my head, there's at least a half a dozen of us that I kind of know by name, and I'm sure there might be a few more. And so that would be kind of interesting. The thing that always crosses my mind when you're going to do something like a CoCo Fest or Tandy Assembly is what is being done to leverage local marketing, like newspapers and for Craigslist or bulletin boards or libraries or anything else to kind of promote the fact that, hey, we have this weekend festival. Because I always know about when there's a Renaissance festival. I know when there's going to be a pirate festival or an art show, and so I always know when there's going to be something going on and any surrounding community within 100 miles from where I'm at, because these people kind of manage to promote the fact they're doing this, and it'd be interesting to see how that can apply to these events,
Put something in the paper for the old folks that read it.
Yeah.
So in the past few days or past week or so, Randy Kindig, I know, spent some time listing the event in some Craigslist for some of the surrounding towns like Columbus and Dayton or whatever, and I'm pretty sure he also has gotten them listed in some of the event sections of some of the local papers. That's all pretty recent, so it probably could have been a little earlier, but there is some effort there to at least get the word out that something's coming. So.
Right. So yeah, that's something that would definitely help. I've come up with, and nobody steal this from me, but this is going to be something I'm going to put on my slideshow at my Tandy Assembly presentation. But I'm going to talk about when you want to establish something on social media or like on the internet, like a broadcast. The old saying is, if you build it, they will come. But if you spam the hell out of it, you greatly increase your odds. So,
very true.
Yeah, but all indications point to Tandy Assembly being a huge success on a lot of levels. And I just think, if we get 45 people there and we're all just having a good time, that's successful. But I would estimate there's going to be significantly more than that. But what got me going to CoCo Fest was the CoCo Crew podcast, because you had somebody championing it and talking it up and creating the interest. So there's not just one podcast at this point now, too. There is technically 3 or 4. So you have the Trash Talkers, you've got Floppy Days. We have been plugging it here and on the CoCo Crew as well. So there's definitely a lot of fanfare helping to spread this word, and so I think the buzz and the interest is definitely there.
Yeah. So, Steve, it's kind of before your time with the community. I'm sure Curtis will remember that we had some Skype calls that were kind of on a monthly basis, I think, several years ago, and we get some of the some of the well-known people, I guess, is me and Boise and Steve Bjork was in on them, and Tim Lynn there, and a few other folks. And they were kind of, well, they were more like just get together and talk, but that always came up as a topic there is, how can we promote CoCoFest better or at all, really? Some of them did, some of them became a little bit less complaint about Glenside. But so anyway, so it's been a long-standing thing in the community is, hey, we've got this, we should talk about it more and see if we get more people to turn out. And just nobody really did it. And so that's kind of was part of the inspiration for what I started doing with some of the blogging and then eventually to the podcast and whatever else. And, like you say, I think it's sort of a self-fulfilling thing. You stand up and talk about how great it is, and other people come and say, hey, that actually was pretty cool. And then they tell people about how great it is, and, and they tell two friends, and they tell two friends, and so on and so on and so on. Anyway, sorry, that's another old reference. I hope some of you old
yeah,
guys.
No, I get it. Yeah.
And giving, targeting your advertising for it to people that will be of a like mind, like other retro computer groups, etc. Like doing a generic newspaper. I know we used to do that here for CoCo stuff, and we used to have a couple of not really trade shows, but just more like exhibitions that we used to do at the malls and stuff. And attendance didn't really go up whether we advertised or not, because your average computer nerd already knew this type of stuff was going on for the various platforms, and they didn't read the paper to look for this stuff. So it wasn't a very good return investment, at least back then. I don't know, maybe that's different now, but I think we start targeting maybe some other tech podcasts, even stuff that's more modern, or some of the YouTube pages, et cetera, that are that, and maybe see if they can maybe promote it a little bit. That might help.
I was thinking that since Florida is all the way down here in the corner of the U.S., unlike Chicago, it's a little bit more centrally located. One of the things I could do, we wanted to organize a meeting for that, is to, put in some of the other retro computer folks as well, not just color computer. And I have, I've mentioned on this, I have TI-99, I have an Apple, I have a bunch of other machines as well as just the color computer, So, and I think that as retro computer enthusiasts, these users of all these old machines, we have a lot of stuff in common that we can talk about.
Oh, Mark Overholser is a good example of
that. Definitely, yeah, yep. Yeah, the question just becomes: is there any other way you can get? Because so the people who would come anyways, or who would know about it, or would know how to search for it, they're going to find it, or they're going to know about it. But the idea of getting just a casual person to stroll by and check out this thing, reaching out to people who aren't necessarily directly retro, but what happens if you're just like, hey, honey, what do you want to do this weekend? Oh, look, here in the paper it says there's this CoCoFest, and it's been going on for 28 years, and they're talking about a 35-year-old computer. You know what? For craps and giggles, let's take a look and see what these jackasses are doing. You might get some random. It's really more about the effort and just trying new things and seeing if you can get more people to come. And I've got no complaints about the attendance of CoCoFest. It's been nice, but if it was. I don't know if you guys have noticed this about me or not, but I'm a slightly overzealous when it comes to trying to promote things.
Slightly. I had no idea.
Borderline annoying, but if it's something that you are invested in and it's something that you want people to perhaps take a look at, it's nobody's going to just go out of their way to check you out. You have to reach out, and there's got to be different ways to try to reach out and expand your sphere of influence. So just try different things.
I'm involved with space stuff. I have observatory, and I have telescopes, and I found an article on Model 1 being used with a telescope, and I was able to post that in a couple of the places where I hang out for astronomy stuff, and then I got some people talking about their first computer being a Model 1 or a CoCo, and I directed them over this way. So
yeah.
Maybe even from that angle, what I know and other things, maybe that'll be a way to draw other people from the periphery.
Yeah. I think all these things are, because sometimes I'll be in a different retro group and I'll be watching that group and they'll post a random thing about something that has to do with the TRS-80, and then that's your chance to comment in and say, oh, that's cool, yeah, you like this, and by the way, here's a podcast you can check out, and here's a YouTube channel you can check out. So when I see these random postings on other groups I'm a member of, I take that opportunity to strategically share some other resources that if anybody found that post interesting, they may find these other things more interesting too. Do you guys have
a gut feeling about somebody who refers to our computers as trash 80s?
I'm not a fan of the term.
I'm not either.
I think the people, it's almost like being a person of color having the right to use the N-word. If you own one and you're loyal to one, maybe you can say it affectionately, but from the outside, I look at it as not flattering.
It wasn't a term of affection back in the day, I'll tell you that. I know some people claim that now, but I don't think they were in the community back then, because it definitely wasn't. That was like Commodore versus Crapple versus Trash 80. Like, everybody was dissing everybody else back then.
Yeah.
Those rotten apples.
I just sort of overlook it these days. A lot of people just use it as a term of, nickname, etc. for the machines, whatever. I as I said, I sort of had a low opinion of their black and white block graphics line myself. So, but whatever. Each of the machines had their strengths and their weaknesses, what they did well, what they didn't do well. Yeah.
Michael Newman in the chat says he's never been a fan of that term either. Glad to hear that, Michael. Who's the guy who does all the did all the assembly books that the CoCo crew interviewed, as well as
William Barton Jr.?
Lance Leventhal.
Lance Leventhal. So Lance Leventhal, who did all the assembly books, he was recently on the Antic podcast too, and they asked him, what's your favorite system? He goes, oh, it'd have to be the Trash 80. And he just kind of casually referred to it as that, because I guess that was just what he was used to calling it back then, or used to hearing it back then. So obviously he wasn't meaning to disparage the system, because he said it was one of his favorites, but he called it the Trash 80, Yeah,
and that's why I've seen that a lot. And that's, I don't use the term myself typically to refer to the machine generally, but yeah, I've seen it used a lot by people just casually to refer to that general line of computers. So I don't give it a lot of thought.
Yeah. Solstice is saying too in the live chat, never liked Trash 80, given the TRS-80 was not a crap computer, but it was an ingenious effort by Radio Shack to get computers into everyone's hands. Yeah, agreed.
Maybe I should make a graphic, with the cross through it.
Yeah.
No Trash 80 spoken.
Trash. Yeah, and it's ironic that the TRS-80 podcast calls themselves the Trash Talkers, but obviously it's a play on words, and
it's a tongue-in-cheek thing.
Yeah, they're a fan of the platform. So
I do remember back in the early '80s, Rainbow Magazine in the letters page when they were arguing what to call the TRS-80 color computer, everybody was saying no Trash 80. We don't even have a Z80 in here, but there was an argument between 80C and CoCo, and eventually CoCo won, but.
Right. Oh, so you actually said a Cray computer. I saw the Cray, but I thought that was a typo there, Solstice. He's saying, no, the TRS-80 was not a Cray computer, right? When the Cray computer was a supercomputer. Yes, granted, it wasn't a supercomputer, but it was still a valiant effort to get computers into the hands of the public.
We had a Gray computer.
It was a Gray, Battleship Gray. And Nick Marionettes.
Silver.
Yeah, Nick Marionettes is in the live chat, biggest supporter of Nitrous 9 out there. Ease of use. Yeah, not a fan of that at all. And I think Mark Overholser and I were talking about this recently too. We were just chatting in a car drive. But what do you think about being called a geek if you're in IT? And honestly, I'm not a fan of that either. Whereas, Best Buy tried to hipsterize the term Geek Squad to make geek chic. And I will admit that in general, I am a geek. The fact I'm playing with a color computer and I collect old things and I have action figures on display and I have comic books and things like that, yes, I'm not going to defend the fact I'm a geek. But when it comes to the fact that I do IT for a living, I don't want to think of myself as a geek or be referred to as anyone's geek. You know what I mean? I'm a professional. I've spent many years.
Maybe we should have a pocket protector with the CoCoTALK logo on it.
Actually, you might qualify as a nerd instead. I'm not sure.
They're just not.
I might buy that.
Yeah, David Ladd is known to wear a pocket protector on many occasions. So,
yeah, geek I'm a bit better with though, because I mean, even Bill Gates has referred to us as a collective group as geeks, and the famous geeks are going to take over the world, which has pretty well already happened. So
right.
For me, that's almost a badge of honor at this point.
Yeah, I still take umbrage with it to steal more lines from John Linville. So,
so my wife and kids are always surprised whenever there's somebody who would fit the geek model, a typical IT guy or whatever, that isn't totally enthusiastic about retro computers. So they refer to CoCo Fest as a geek fest or a nerd fest or whatever. And so they expect just typical nerds or geeks or whatever to be there. And I say, no, we are definitely a very special breed of geeks.
We're like a subspecies.
The upper echelon of geek elite.
But I mean, I listen to other podcasts like Current Geek, which is, I mean, they totally go for the geek label and the nerd label. In fact, they differentiate what's the difference between them and all this. And they cover geek culture every week on a podcast. So
the interesting thing is, when I took the job as IT manager up here in Michigan at a facility, my wife's family is not very technical. They wasn't understanding what I was going to be doing, and my explanation to get them to clue in was chief geek.
Right, chief geek, right? Chief geek and bottle washer. Now, Nick Marionettes, who's not joining us in Skype, I'm not sure why. I know Nick Marentes is in the middle of moving, downsizing his house, but Nick, in case you haven't learned, David Ladd has been interviewed by the CoCo Crew podcast, so we can no longer make fun of him on his show. We must give him the proper respect that he deserves. So we cannot include or even mention David Ladd as we're joking about the term geek here right now. He is Sir David Ladd.
By the way, Dave, your check has been returned by the bank. So.
Hey, are any of you guys a member of the Computer Enthusiast Master Race?
Yes. Yeah, that's a Facebook group. Yeah, I find it funny. I find because that's a long running pissing contest between PC and console. So the people
they have 51,000 members.
Yeah, they're a big group. So that is, so what's happening now is that there are just different ways for you to kind of spray your testosterone and mark different territories. So these guys want to have the biggest, bestest rig. So I've got the latest i7 processor, and I've got the 4-channel NVIDIA GTX 1080 Ti ×4 with liquid cooling, and I've got LEDs in my case, and I've got, it's like the Tim the Toolman, so it's everybody's trying to see who can bark the loudest, and so these guys consider themselves the master race of owning computers,
Has anybody put LEDs in their CoCos yet?
We talked about that. Has anybody? I haven't, but it's cool.
Yeah, there's been power on off ones, upper lowercase switch ones. I've seen all kinds of them.
Hey,
I actually did one back in the day as well. I actually did that Turbo Light thing back about 25 years ago, which you boosted up the signal to the 1.78. It would have the little light that would come on.
Oh, neat! So you were in turbo mode. I remember that button on the old 46 machines.
Yeah. I actually sold a little board.
I remember seeing that little project, and I also saw there was one that somebody did. They actually put some cool, I think, bluish LEDs inside their color computer case that lit up through the heat vents, which was interesting to look at. It was an interesting visual effect.
I sold a board years ago that you could clip onto your CPU, and it decoded some of the signals inside, so it showed when it was halt in different modes.
Oh,
and it went through the heat vent on the CoCo 3, and it was sized. You just pressed it in, clipped them to the right pins on your CPU.
Yeah, I remember on the CoCo 1, like a lot of people drilled a hole in the 4K, 16K, 32K badge, and that's where they put their power on/off indicator light.
Interesting. Well, for that, because that doesn't have to do too much defacing of the case at that point, right?
Yeah.
Ciaran is in the text chat too. I guess we lost him on the live chat, but he said that amazing how many people are geeks now that would probably have been using the word with its original intent in the day. Now, for those of you not aware of the origin of the term geek, back in the days of the circus sideshow freaks, the geek was the guy who would bite the head off of a live chicken. That's where the term geek came from.
Now that's a rock star. But.
That's an Alice Cooper or Ozzy Osbourne concert, right? So
Osbourne. Cooper,
So
I don't think. Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of power indicators, the fact that the color computer does not have any sort of power indicator on it has always been a little bit of a thorn in my side that's irritated me. Is like, you know, I can't tell. And to this day, it annoys me. I can't tell if I accidentally left the darn thing on.
I've done that too, because my CoCo 3 is right in front of my keyboard here. It's under a little shelf, and sometimes I'll reach in there to get something. I'm like, man, it's hot in here. Oh, I left my CoCo on, so it's just...
Which is not good for the machine either.
Not necessarily.
Well, you could use a master switch system like I have.
Yeah, that's what I do.
I strongly suggest for anybody who's running their color computers these days to hook it in some sort of a switched power outlet or something, because of the fact that even if you turn off the power switch on the color computer, the high voltage section of the power supply is still running. It only switches the low voltage output on the supply with that switch on the back of the machine. So you're constantly running that transformer in the back, even if you turn the machine off, if it's still plugged into power.
Gotcha. Good tip. Good tip.
One of the changes I did to the MPI that I recently got was to upgrade it to CoCo 3, but also while I was doing it, it now has a power-on LED that goes for the heat vent.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, let's run some more spots for Tandy Assembly sponsors. Maybe another Tandy Assembly promo here. And then since we still have John, maybe we can go ahead and go over the Tandy Assembly website like we typically do later on in the show and look at the all of our different speaker lineups and our presenters and things like that. So hold that thought, folks. It's time for another Tandy Assembly sponsor recognition here. Be right back.
Tandy Assembly would like to thank our sponsor, SIDTRUG, the Sydney TRS-80 MS-DOS Users Group, a group of computer enthusiasts meeting on a regular basis to discuss hardware and software issues. Their origins are with the Tandy TRS-80 and compatible System 80 range of computers. SIDTRUG meets at Regents Park Community Centre Hall, 1 Amy Street, Regents Park, New South Wales 2143. For more details about SIDTRUG, visit sidtrug.org. That's SYDTRUG.org. Thank you to SIDTRUG for being a Tandy Assembly sponsor.
Something new is coming.
Tandy Assembly. Tandy Assembly is about Radio Shack and Tandy computers.
Tandy Assembly is about interacting.
Tandy Assembly is about people.
Tandy Assembly is about fun.
The first gathering of its kind.
Computers of the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
All Radio Shack and Tandy makes and models.
Join us. Don't miss Tandy Assembly.
In Chillicothe, Ohio.
October 7th and 8th.
Whether you're near or far.
Tandy Assembly is for everyone.
Visit our webpage at www.tandyassembly.com.
Tandy Assembly.
Hey, this is Bruce Moore, author of Force of Doom, and you're watching the Original Gamer Stevie Stroke.
Are you ready? For the Forest of Doom.
You got to love that. November 2017, I think. The best release date ever. That's another title that we're definitely looking forward to seeing here in the near future. Will be Bruce Moore's Forest of Doom. And we got to hear one of Bruce Moore's little spots on the latest episode of the CoCo Crew podcast this month too. So it's great to see how all these community projects are getting the airplay that they deserve. So
one thing we have to do is we have to get Bruce on for a demo of the game, because I don't think too many people have actually seen it.
Yeah. Well, he
like the actual gameplay.
Yeah, he has mentioned that we will do that in November. So one of the first Saturdays in November, we will debut it here on CoCoTALK when it becomes available to the public. And it would be interesting to see that on a ROM cartridge too. And we have heard that basic games can be put on a ROM cartridge. So I don't know if that's still something that might happen. I know he has a distribution method where he's going to be selling the book or the strategy guide to go with it, and you'll get a download link from that book. But it might be neat to have maybe a limited run of some tangible copies of the program. That might be kind of cool. So if only we knew a guy. If only there was a source for either, I don't know, cartridge cases, maybe circuit boards, I don't know, maybe a production facility, maybe somebody who could put it in a box and shrink wrap it for us.
You're just dreaming at this point.
No, yeah, I've definitely
crazy talk.
I've talked to him about that, but he's got his own plans there with the book and on everything, and you know, it'll just have to work out. I think he's open to the notion of a collector's edition or something like that, but I don't think he wants to think about it until after the November release. So
right,
yeah. And you're kind of busy with Rick Adams stuff right now too, aren't you?
Well, I've actually finished up with Rick Adams stuff for now, but other than, you know, I'm sure there'll be people who want some after we sell out. But
right. What was the total production run as far as number of units of Bomb Threat?
It's going to be was 2 dozen,
okay.
And then a couple of those are already marked, like for Rick or whatever. So
okay.
So
yeah, I'm going to wait until the CoCo Fest in Chicago to pick up mine, because I want him to get him to sign it. But just you know, won't be ordering it right off the bat, but I will be getting one.
Cool.
There you go. We got to support our community, right? If you don't support the community won't exist. So we got to support the scene. So
Tandy Assembly would like to thank our sponsor, TRS 8-Bit. The TRS 8-Bit newsletter is a treasure of information for anyone interested in using, maintaining, or repairing a TRS-80 computer. Each issue features useful technical articles, amazing retro advertisements, and practical articles on making repairs, maintaining, and improving your TRS-80. If you own a TRS-80, you owe it to yourself to read TRS 8-Bit, edited by Dusty Miller. Visit TRS 8-Bit at their website, www.trs-80.org.uk. Thank you to TRS 8-Bit for being a Tandy Assembly sponsor.
Where did those voices come
Okay, that was my bad because I clicked on the wrong thing. I was trying to go full screen to show off the Tandy Assembly website, and I just ran another Tandy Assembly sponsor spot, and that's fine. We want to thank all the sponsors of Tandy Assembly. So here we are on the website, and it is tandyassembly.com is the website for those of you who have not been watching our show for the past 6 months. And it is a lovely looking website, and as you can see here by this little carousel of imagery scrolling by us here, Tandy was responsible for a plethora of machines, right? A lot of different computers that Tandy made, and pocket computers, mobile computers, the original TRS-80, TRS-80 model 1, 3, 4, 2, 16, 24, 32, 44, HUT, right? Color computer 1, 2, and 3. Tandy 1000 through 5000 line. They got into the PC compatible range. So there is no shortage of Tandy systems. And Tandy Fest is a weekend-long retreat where we will all get together and pay homage to these systems. And
quick question for John on this. It just kind of struck me here. Does that include the Tandy distributor product stuff like the TDP 100, though that wasn't sold through Tandy?
Well, I would think it does. I mean, it's not exactly a formal ticket punch there. I mean, if you bring it, you can show it. But, you know, that's the idea is, you know, anything related to Tandy.
Okay.
So presumably, if you do bring something that, like if you brought a TDP 100, presumably the point is to tell people about the CoCo and its other related machines, right? So.
Yeah, because it was a Tandy distributor product, which is what TDP stood for. It just was sold like through RCA stores and whatever else back in the day. So.
Maybe I will go ahead and bring one just to show off too. So kind of cool.
Yeah, so we're not being, the purpose is not to be snobby. It's just to kind of limit the focus, just to bring more people in that are actually kind of related or have a relationship to a common entity or whatever. You were talking earlier. I think it was Barry was talking about maybe he'd started some sort of meetup amongst different kinds of machines, and that's what it occurred to us over time is that inevitably people are going to die off, and and it seems like things will get smaller. Although it seems like in the past couple of years, if anything, the communities have gotten bigger. So we may have been wrong, but that was one thing we were looking for. Is how do we expand our audience, and how do we do so in a way that we actually like? It's one thing you bring in a bunch of guys that are mini computer specialists or whatever, and I'm sure they'd be great guys, and there'd be some interest there to talk, some common interest there. But I think when we settled on let's find other Tandy folk, it would seem like a good way to really expand the audience, and still kind of remain true to our roots. And so it's been real good. It's worked out real well dealing with Pete and Randy, the trash talkers. And some of the others like Ian Maverick or whatever, it just seems like a good fit. It's a good match for the community. They have a certain level of interest in our stuff. We have a certain level of interest in their stuff. We all have the same kind of, gripes and complaints about Radio Shack from back in the day or whatever, but also the same kind of common memories about crawling through the Radio Shack computer catalog or whatever. So I think it's going to be a good mix of people, and like you said, I think we've got a healthy room, a healthy number of rooms have been rented out or reserved for the weekend, a couple of dozen or whatever, 27 I think. We certainly have pre-sold a lot of tickets, and we sold out our tables, so I think it's going to be a successful event. Looking forward definitely to spending some time with you guys and some new folks, and enjoying all that Chillicothe has to offer.
One thing I'm really going to be curious of, I've known a few other local ones back more in the day that actually did the TRS-80 line, including the Model 1s, 3, 4s, 12s, 16s, etc., and the CoCo. I have not seen anybody try to do the Tandy 1000 line, like the IBM PC compatible, so I'm really interested what the interest and the turnout for that particular side of the Tandy thing is going to be.
Yeah, and I'm too. Neil has kind of reached out that way a bit. He's got a display with some Tandy 1000 stuff. I've reached out a little bit on the Tandy 1000 Yahoo group. We've gotten some response, not a lot, but I think there's a few people that are going to show up. We have the person that you guys have seen on the exhibitor list is going to bring his Tandy 1000, 2000, 3000, 4000, 5000. So we should have at least some amount of representation of that. But there were a lot of people who got their start in the PC world on Tandy 1000s, and it's an interesting enough machine. It's not exactly a Me Too PC. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they have their own special graphics modes, which a lot of the game writers specifically wrote code for, like Ciaran, etc. They also had their sound chip built in. They had the DeskMate. Came with it. The Tandy 2000 actually for its time was quite advanced beyond any of the PCs. So,
so it's, like I say, if we are going to hook up with a PC crowd, at least it's kind of a quirky PC crowd that we have a connection to,
Right.
Yeah, they added some extra graphics mode, and they also added some extra sound stuff to some of the machines. The thing is, though, they are essentially the core of them. A lot of the software that people ran on them, etc. They did run PC software. To this day, we're sort of still running the same more overall hardware architecture that those machines were.
So, it's a healthy part, a healthy chunk of people that I think can contribute to our community and keep our little event running.
Yeah.
and I think it'll be good.
Yeah, my curiosity on it is basically because I know quite a few people that upgraded to Tandy 1000s and 1200s and whatever else later on, but the rabid fandom part of things I didn't see as much in that group, so I don't know how dedicated the people would be, like some of the CoCo and the TRS-80 people are. So I'm really interested just how that's going to work out. I mean, I don't have any expectations at this point. I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, so my impression is that there actually is kind of a subset of the retro PC gaming community that is kind of dedicated to that Tandy 1000 / PC Junior line of machine, with the graphics modes and such. So it's like there's a little niche there, and I think there's some quirky folks like us that maybe just came into the computer world a little bit later or whatever. I'm hoping some of those weirdos show up and bring their copies of Space Quest or whatever, and who knows, maybe we can sell them some joystick adapters. And
I have a trivia question.
Sure.
What was the earliest PC to emulate a CoCo?
Jeff Vavasor's.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever that was.
Yeah, I think it was Jeff's DOS color computer emulator, which I still have a copy of. It's a fairly effective emulator.
Yeah, and it ran on I think it required only a 286, didn't it? It didn't run that fast, but I think it would run on it.
It required a fairly high-end machine to do an effective emulation at 100% speed.
Well, the CoCo 1 and 2 one didn't as much. The CoCo 3 one definitely did.
Yeah.
So did we get it right, Ron, or are you privy to something that we're not aware of?
No, just a question.
Oh, okay. So, it was just a question. It wasn't like you were holding on to some little pearl of wisdom there, huh?
No, because I have, a Tandy 1200, and I wonder if that could do it. And then I thought, well, it's only, 4 megahertz?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the lowest emulators required a 286 or higher, if I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, my second generation computer was, I went through the CoCo 1 and 3, and then I evolved into a Tandy 1000 and didn't look back. So the original Tandy 1000 was my first PC. And the thing that attracted me to it was, number one, I was working at Radio Shack at the time, and the graphics and sound it offered were better than the average PC. The IBM CGA graphics were only 4-color. IBM standard speaker music wasn't that good. So to have the 3-voice music, have the 16 colors, have these games like the Sierra Online games, those things were hot commodities. So the King's Quest series was bleeding edge technology with computer graphics and animation and sound for its time. A game like Thexter on the Tandy 1000 was a mind-blowing thing to see on a home computer. So
you still have your 1000?
No, I don't have any of my original tech anymore. All my stuff now is Oh, Curtis, what kind of mug you got going on there, Curtis? Hold that up for just a second.
I don't know. I just grabbed one out of the.
I'm a coconut.
There, and
that is a nice looking mug. Is there any place online where we could possibly grab a?
I think there is, and I think they have some metal traveling cups. I'm going to be ordering right after the show because I get a chance to once I finish payroll. So
a little shameful plug. Hold it up again.
I'm kind of feeling peckishly thirsty here. So.
There you go.
Yeah, it's
retro swag shop.
The IBMs of the day were 4-color graphics and a single bit, basically beep sound, and that was about it.
Yeah, Apple II sound basically is what it was.
Yeah, so the Tandy 1000s and even the CoCo compared very favorably to those machines of the day.
Sure. All right, well, let's look at the website. So we're looking at the homepage here. Now you see a nice little banner. So we've been reviewing this every week now, since this website has been up. So I guess we'll go ahead and start by looking at the speakers. And this lineup hasn't changed too much. Rick Adams was the most recent keynote addition to the speaker lineup. So Scott Adams of Adventure International fame is one of our speakers. Don French. The true story of the making of the TRS-80, and by listening to the trash talkers are saying that we're going to hear things now during this presentation that he hasn't said anywhere else before, so we're going to get some new dirt on that, so that's going to be interesting. Lance Miklas, and I'm not as familiar with Lance Miklas, so I don't know if, John, if you want to chime in on that? And
I don't know a lot about him either, honestly. I think he worked with Adventure International and did some.
He made a handful of games for the TRS-80. And I think
TRS-80.
something for the CoCo, too. He made a space...
Yeah, he made Star Trek 3 for the CoCo, which is on my webpage if you want to see it, and it's still my favorite Star Trek game.
Okay, excellent. We'll have to review that at some point in time. Okay,
I know he was interviewed for the Get Lamp documentary by Jason Scott. That's one of the you can find on YouTube.
Okay. And our very own Rick Adams will be giving a presentation as well on the resurrection of Bomb Threat. We've been following that story closely. We will be purchasing and owning Bomb Threat at Tandy Assembly. It's really exciting.
That directly involves John now, too.
Yeah. John Linville is going to basically wrap up the show.
So I think Pete Satinsky's actually going to speak just after me. I thought originally I was the last speaker, but
okay. So the lineup has changed. We'll see that in a minute here. So Peter Satinsky, the history of the TRS-80 Model 2, myself, Brendan Donahue giving us the latest update on the CoCo VGA projects, including having to hack Extended Color Basic for 64-column support, right? Because you got new screen modes, you got new print at commands, and all kinds of stuff that have to be extended to there. This one's new now, too. This is a new addition. So George Phillips, the making of Tris Vid. So this is like a video player for the TRS-80, similar to John's video player and Zipster's, right?
Some of you guys may have seen that on YouTube or on Facebook. They had the video posting with it's the the one where they have the Model 4 showing the Doctor Who intro, and they swap floppy disk about 3 times.
That's going click, 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 swap.
Exactly. That's his demo. So he's going to talk about making that. So he has replaced Randy Kindig in the speakers lineup. So.
Very nice. Oh, really? So Randy's not going to speak at all?
No, he. Well, I think he has to leave a little early on Sunday or something. So kind of was convenient. So.
Okay. Well, it's all right. And then this one I thought was really interesting as soon as I heard about this, but the idea of an Android-based emulator and an app store where you can get TRS-80 games, this I am really interested in seeing. And I think this is one advantage that the other TRS-80 line has over us is it's not tied into the basic ROMs. So to release this commercially or even to release it at all, there's no threat of some potential lawsuit going on there, I suppose. So that's going to be kind of cool. That I'm really looking forward to seeing. So these are the different speaking presentations that will be going on. And, of course, then we have the exhibitor area. And I don't know if you still have a picture of the floor plan down here. I don't see it here now. But, yes, so the exhibitor lineup is really taking shape here. And the exhibitor lineup, much like what we've had at CoCo Fest, there's a different room for the exhibitors. And so we have Mike Rowan will be exhibiting. Is Richard still on the call?
Yes, I'm still here.
So Richard is Boyson Tech, and for those who are not familiar with Richard, well, he used to work for Tandy doing assembly and repair and stuff for the plant. So Richard has got a lot of real-world history working on Tandy systems. And Richard will also, kind of similar to what Mark Morlett has done in the past, if somebody needs some work done on a CoCo at the show, he'll be providing the ability to do repairs and upgrades and things like that. And if you want to also speak, Richard, about some of your other offerings, like your SCART to HDMI cables and any other goodies you might have for us.
Yeah, basically I'm going to be doing the SCART HDMI cables. I'm still making some more of them. They'll be available. I'm also going to have a limited amount of RGB to VGA cable conversion. It's all it is a straight through conversion from the connector from the CoCo 3, and it's going to be a VGA, the 15-pin connector. So if you want to connect your 15 kilohertz monitor directly, you don't have to have any kind of other special cable for it. And then I'm also going to be selling the 6309 processors as well, and I'll also be able to install them if you need to.
Okay.
So I know both Mike Rowan and myself have gotten those NEC 71V monitors, so we're going to want those 15 kilohertz VGA cables.
Right. Yeah, I'll have some of those ready. And then
I have a question on the 15 kilohertz VGA cable. Now, because VGA is a digital, not an analog signal, Are you just limited to like 8 colors or something, like your 6?
VGA is analog.
Yeah, it's an analog signal.
Well, I thought you had. Well, maybe I'm remembering it wrong. It could be. There's 6 bits of each color, and I think
HDMI is digital.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm getting the two confused.
And some DVI displays are digital, but VGA is definitely analog.
Okay, so you get the full 64 colors and everything else. The only thing you wouldn't get, I'm assuming, is the composite artifacting stuff.
Right. Yeah. The artifacting, it's just black and white.
Okay.
Right.
So.
Yeah, the only way you get artifacting is over the NTSC signal type. And it's actually a function of the way that it decodes that signal.
Misinterpreting, yeah.
Yeah, and also the cable I'm making, that was based on Barry Nelson's design that, it's available on the website. I don't know the exact link, but that's how I got the design. And there's just been a lot of interest in people wanting for those cables, so that's why I started to go ahead and make them. And I'll also have them
demonstrate. Thank you for that.
Yes. And I'll also have it demonstrate. I'm going to have it hooked through I have an old Pioneer, not console, but a home theater system that has the HDMI input, so then it'll also output to speakers just to demonstrate, you can actually play sound through it as well.
Neat.
And then I'll also, and then I'll also have my entire CoCo 1 collection from the Revision C all the way to the F board on display.
Neat.
Now I wish I could be there because the C board is one I would really like to see in real life. Never have.
All right. It's almost like touching the heron at this point when you get to see one of those things.
Take lots of pictures, Steve.
So Peter and Alex Zatinsky, that's Peter's son, will be showing off Tandy Xenix, and I believe they're going to have these things networked in some capacity. We'll be showing off some of that kind of stuff. We all know and love Cloud9. We know them from CoCo Fest, so that's Mark Marlette and Sandy Weimer. So not only does Cloud9 provide a lot of different products like the Triad board for memory upgrades and some CoCo RGB to VGA adapters, and he will do repairs and upgrades. But they typically also have a bunch of CoCo products for resale, so you can buy old cartridges and manuals and books and mice and things like that, hardware. So it's a nice little flea market of new and old stuff, and they're great folks. So now Peter Bartlett, I am learning more about him just recently, about all the projects that he works on by listening to the most recent Trash Talk one where they're talking about the things he's done. And so the thing that also John Strong revealed for us last week too, from his coming back from VCF Midwest, was that he's working on a cartridge you can plug into a CoCo to get VGA out passively through the ROM pack port with no soldering or hardware required. So that's a neat project, and that will be on display. Might not be finished, so that'll be pretty cool to see though. Which again, I know this is probably brought up. I don't know if John, if you guys had this as a host discussion at one point in time, but the idea of a project registry might help for people to know what kind of coals are in what fires, and not that it would necessarily stop anybody, but just to know that efforts are being made, and maybe you could, not have to reinvent a wheel that's already halfway finished or anything else like that.
Yeah, I mean, we have discussed that topic. I think we kind of came out against it in general, but it is good to know if people are working on stuff and want to tell you about it. It's good to have that in the community. So that's sort of our job and your job and the Facebook group's job is to provide that outlet, I guess. So as long as people are active on things, hopefully we'll all hear about it and know about it. It always amazes me the capacity for people to overlook what's been talked about.
Right. Like the fact that people are posting comments saying, if somebody doesn't start working on making new CoCo hardware, it's never going to happen. Well, there's at least 2 projects that already exist right now. So,
yeah.
So Randy Kindig will be showing Tandy's portable computers through the year. So probably from the Pocket computer to the Model 100 to maybe some laptops. Friend of the show and friend of the community, Jim Brain from Retro Innovations will be there, who we all know and love. Ian Maverick is the Australian version of Ed Snyder. He makes a lot of stuff for TRS Radio Model 1, 2, 3, 4s and stuff, and so he'll be showing off his stuff. He's also a member of the Trash Talkers. Interesting guy. Brendan Donahue with his CoCo VGA project will be there. Alan Hightower with the complete line of Tandy 1000 through 5000 PCs. That's impressive. I heard you guys talking about that, saying some of these models are so rare. And which ones were the super rare ones? Was the 2000 and the 5000, was it? Or
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the 2000 for sure.
So that'll be interesting to see. John W. Linville, Retro Tinker, who said it's going to be more of cartridge selling at this point. Will you have maybe the ROM pack demo with the Game Master sound playing and things like that too?
That seems like a good idea.
Let people hear what they need to be developing for.
Yeah.
So, and I know John Strong mentioned last week that his next two projects will feature that Game Master sound. So the Dr. CoCo, which is a Dr. Mario clone, and his Fix-It Felix Handy Andy Wreck-It Ralph clone will feature that too. So we're looking forward to some commercial games using that music. And Simon Jonassen, who's with us too, has made a player for it, and we've heard some of Simon's madness come through that sound chip too, which is kind of cool. Evan Wright will be, we saw Evan Wright at CoCo Fest this past year too. He's got a tool set where you can create a text adventure and then output it to run on a Z80 or a CoCo and run a full compiled text adventure game that you can create with a tool. It's a very cool project. Evan Wright also produced Flood It game, which John Linville will have for sale in cartridge format. Flood It game is a pretty cool game. Scott Adams from Adventure International will be there, so that'll be interesting to see and hear what he has to say. My co-pilot, carpool, and roommate Michael Brandt will be here as well. So Mike's Miscellany. I don't know if I pronounced that right, Miscellany or whatever. Mike has got an interesting retro collection, so Mike has got a lot of stuff, CoCo, Tandy 1000s, and you name it. So it'll be interesting to see what he procures and places upon his table. And Rick and Mike, by the way, Mike is the guy who John Linville called Qui-Gon Jinn when he was at my house that day when we had a little CoCo Fest wrap up and he had the ponytail and the beard and everything. So Mike's a good guy. I think he's cut his hair now, so his hair is a little bit shorter. Rick Adams will be there. You got to know him. You got to love him. Rick Adams with his Bomb Threat and also author of Temple of Rom and Shanghai and other things for the CoCo. I can't wish enough good things to happen to somebody like you want for Rick Adams. You know, he's a great guy. He's done a lot, and I really want Bomb Threat to be a good success for him, and I'm glad it's on a cartridge.
Now you've done it. You said Bomb Threat multiple times, so now the Homeland Security is now listening.
Yes.
Well, you gotta remember we've got Bomb Squad.
Bomb Squad, Bomb Threat. You know, it's somebody's got to make a game called Al Qaeda and another one called ISIS, and we'll have all the bases covered.
Oh my gosh! Now you've really done it.
Fly around the world promoting them, right?
What's in your suitcase? Oh, just a whole bunch of bomb threats.
I think my next text adventures game is going to be something like North Korea nuclear weapons research or something.
Oh boy! Now YouTube's going to block this one.
So. Brett Gordon will be showing off Fuzzix, a Unix-like operating system for the CoCo. John's wearing his Fuzix shirt there. Fuzzix. George Phillips showing off Trisvid. Looking for that. David Ladd just chimed in there, everybody. Feiscap, Paul Fiscarelli will be here too. And then Neil Blanchard. Neil has mentioned he's going to show off a Tandy 1000 showing what he calls TGA, which is a Tandy 16 color graphics and 3-voice music, and then another one with the VGA and Sound Blaster compatible sound. So kind of see both ends of the spectrum, some of the early Tandy graphics and sounds and the more PC oriented ones. And then where is our schedule? So you mentioned that a few things have changed in the lineup. So here we go. Yes, so John Linville originally was closing out the show. Now things have moved around. So I think Saturday hasn't changed too much?
Probably not.
Okay. So Saturday, our first speaker is Don French. Then we go to Rick Adams. Brendan Donahue, Lance Miklas. Now, these things are paced out. I'll tell you what, the one thing that I felt was the pacing for CoCo Fest. It almost felt like it was back to back to back to back, you know, and you kind of couldn't breathe in between things, and you kind of missed things. So the pacing here seems to be a little bit better, I think. I'm not sure how much time between presentations, but it'd be nice to decompress and go back to the exhibit floor for a few minutes and come back to see something else. You always feel like you're missing one half of the show sometimes.
Yeah, that's always it's a little unsolvable in some ways, you know, but at least I haven't figured out how to solve it. You know, you have at least in CoCo Fest had a lot of people wanted to speak. In this case, we had not quite as many people asking to speak, but eventually we did get to a point where we're about to overflow.
Yeah, yeah.
So some people will probably think it's too much, but like you say, you know, you got some people who are interested in the speaking and some people who don't really care. So there'll always be that tension. I don't know. I hope you like the show.
No doubt, no doubt.
That goes for listening too, because some people are only interested in specific topics. They're not going to attend every single one anyway. So
right.
Well, it's a little better than what it was years ago. And even at the first CoCo Fest, we had multiple seminars going at the same time.
Yeah, Rainbow Fest was terrible for that.
Right, you had to pick and choose the Rainbow.
Yeah, pick which one of the 10 seminars at 11 o'clock you want to attend. Literally, that's what it was.
Right. So the good thing is I do plan to have the laptop set up with cameras and microphones, so we'll be streaming the whole thing. So if you can't, even if you're there, you might not be able to make every single presentation, but you'll be able to replay them later. And for those of you who also were not aware, these will be streamed through the Tandy Assembly YouTube channel. Tandy Assembly has a YouTube channel. They've been promoting that this weekend. There's a link to that channel in the description to this video right now. So if you're watching this live stream on my channel, you will see a link to not only the Tandy Assembly channel's YouTube page in general, but the link to the live stream that's already open right now. You can watch the clock count down the minutes till we get to when the live stream begins there. So we'll be broadcasting through the Tandy Assembly YouTube channel for all of those events, and I believe many of us too will also be doing our own little thing with cameras and phones and things to record more content. I know I'm going to try to get as much footage from the exhibitor area too that we can air at a later time, and you know, just looking at all the exhibits and perhaps interviewing the people with exhibits and just interviewing the people who are coming to Tandy Assembly to get their feedback on the event and things like that. So I would suspect a lot of content will come from this that we can re-air later for future episodes and things like that, which will be good. Saturday is definitely a full day. So we've got speakers starting at 9:30 in the morning, going all the way up until about 4 o'clock, which is the no minimum bid auction. And I know it's hard to tell what's going to show up there the day of show, but as far as what you guys think you have now, do you think it's a pretty good turnout? Volume of material, I guess?
I mean, I think we've got enough stuff to be worth attending.
Yeah.
Neil's definitely collected together some things. I've got a couple of things I want to put in. You know, it kind of depends on what's going to show up. We have a few people who sort of pledged to bring a few things. I don't know. I think it'll be fun. We'll just have to see.
Yeah, it should be. I'm definitely, you know, I'm not in that mode yet. Once we're done with this episode of this show today, now I start focusing on next weekend. So then I start packing and preparing, and what am I going to bring for my table? What am I going to bring for the auction? So I don't know what I'll have, but I'll definitely bring in something, and you know, every little bit helps. So so the auction is at 4 p.m. And that's a fun event. So if you've seen the ones that happen at CoCo Fest, those no minimum bid auctions are a great source of entertainment. So later on, and then here at least we have a break. So and we don't know how long the auction is going to go, but I don't suspect it'll be 3 hours. So when the auction is done at 7 p.m., we're doing what I just like to call Tandy Talk. So similar to what we're doing here with a bunch of people talking, but we're going to be talking about Tandy Assembly. So hopefully the various podcast hosts will join us, and the people who are at the event will join us, and it should be an interesting, fun thing where we're just all going to talk about, you know, Tandy Assembly and what's going on. What do we like about the show? The Jeopardy show was fun at CoCo Fest, so another quiz show. The subject matter, I would suspect, will be a little bit more broad spectrum. So there's going to be questions not just about the CoCo and what's the model number of the VDG chip. I'm sure there's going to be questions about, you know, all kinds of Tandy products. And so I'm definitely not going to do well in this one. And then 9 p.m. till whenever social time. So that kind of wraps up our Saturday. And then Sunday we have Scott Adams' Trisvid presentation by George Phillips, John Linville himself, and then Peter Satinsky will close out the show. So that's looking like a pretty good event. Again, I can't see this not being a huge success.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good. We've got, like I said, the indications are we should have at least a reasonable crowd. And you know, it's not just going to be the 5 of us or whatever sitting around.
Right.
Yeah, which might not be so bad.
Right. Honestly,
you know, that was kind of part of the equation to begin with. It's like, well, if we throw the party and only we come, can we have fun? But it's expanded beyond that. I think it's going to be good. I think we're going to, you know, be comparable to a CoCo Fest, which you know, is a pretty good bar to beat on your first time out, I think.
Sure.
So, so we just want to, you know, like I say, get together, have fun, and maybe experience a different style, a different set of retro computers to some degree, but it's really the same folks with a different set of machines. So,
right. Same passion.
Yep.
And if we're
same lunacy, as some people would say.
Right. So if we're using that geek analogy, we're still geeks and we're still geeking out. It just might be a slightly different name on the box we're geeking over, you know. So good stuff. And I mean, I think it's awesome that you guys were able to pull this together. I think it really shows your power and influence you have, because you not only came up with the idea, but you promoted the idea and you've made this a reality. You've got some experience. You've been closely related to CoCo Fest. You're probably familiar to a lot of the logistics and challenges of doing that. So it wasn't like I don't think you came into this completely blind. But the fact that you guys are able to launch an event is impressive, you know?
Yeah, well, like I said, we participated some in some of the CoCo Fest planning over the past few years, and I think that helped at least prepare us for, you know, some of the weird things that you might encounter in planning an event. But you know, it's we just saw a need. We always didn't think the CoCo Fest was quite enough to get us through the whole year. And so that's kind of where all of this has come from. You know, the blogging and the podcasting and now the live event. It's all just to help keep the community going and keep us strong, bring in some new blood. I think it's going to be good. So.
Very, very cool.
So, in fact, you could also mention on the first page, the front page or whatever, the tandyassembly.com, there is now a link to the live stream in case you lose it or can't find it or whatever. It is right on there on the front page.
Okay, let's see. Okay, here it is, live stream. Check out the YouTube live stream page. Matter of fact, when I click on that right now, what we should see is we're actually seeing ourselves. So, yeah, it works. Modern technology. So there it is. So on Tandy Assembly, we have a live stream. We have a link to the live stream. So if you go to tandyassembly.com, that'll make it real easy for you. So that's what we need. Got to make it easy for the masses here. So, yeah, Curtis was putting a message in the chat saying that the Tandy 2000 had a much higher resolution, which it agrees. And so if everybody's also not familiar, and I don't know if this was brought up. Was the Tandy 2000 what they had for auction at CoCo Fest? That's where they had a couple of those ones there too?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. So being as I worked for Radio Shack, I am privy to the fact that the Model 2000 is what we used to run what we back then called the SOS, the store operating system, and all of the yellow receipts that we ran from our books when we hand wrote all the orders. And yeah, we just ask everybody for their name and phone number and address, even though you saw the same person, you know, all the time.
Battery of the month card, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So all those receipts were hand keyed into software running on the Tandy 2000 by the store manager. manager that then got modem out to HQ. So we had a Tandy 2000 set up, and it had a hard drive off to the side or in the case. I don't remember, but I remember it having a very crisp display of text, like Curtis was saying, like the 640 by 400 by 16 color. It was just a very sharp, vivid display. Looked like a neat machine, but we're not a ton of games running on it, though.
But it was also probably one of the least compatible with MS-DOS. It required a special MS-DOS to do some of the stuff. It wasn't as compatible as the 1000 series.
Oh, yeah, the BIOS wasn't PC compatible at all.
Okay.
I had a friend who had one. He lent it to me for a couple months, and it's like, wow, this works, but...
Yeah, really good hardware, but not much software available, unfortunately.
Yeah. Rick Adams, welcome back to the show. How are you, Rick?
Hello. Thanks for listening.
Now, we're getting a little bit of squelch coming from you there. You might need to adjust your antenna just a little bit on that CB, sir.
Yeah, I'm having network problems at the moment.
Ah, there you go. Coming in.
What's new?
Steve Bjork just chimed in the live chat. He says, I should know about the graphics since I did a version of a CoCo game for the Tandy 2000. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Which one was that? Which game?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with the 2000 series games that much, so I don't know which one that would be.
A GB?
Guanabana? I didn't know there was a Guanabana for 2000.
Interesting. I don't know if that's what that his initials mean. Very cool. Well, Rick, we already mentioned the fact that you're not only speaking at Tandy Assembly and our exhibitor at Tandy Assembly, but you also have bomb threat cartridges available. So we've definitely done our attempt to market you.
Okay, well, always appreciated.
I'm looking forward to getting my hands on a shiny bomb threat cartridge for sure. All right.
That will happen.
Oh, David Ladd. David Ladd, the world famous David Ladd, as heard on the CoCo Crew podcast, is here with us. David, anything new in the world of floppies and sector displacement or anything like that? Can you update us?
Not really. I've just been in the process of still, reloading stuff on my computer and things. So.
Okay.
I was still hearing hope more about the magnetic flux of the little particles on the disc, but okay.
Right. So I have a question. So Ron, is there something you want to show off for us today, Ron, on Ron's Garage? Will we be able to?
Yeah, I got two things.
Okay, and then Grant, do you have a newbie question of the week for us this week as well?
Yes, I do.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial. And who wants to go first after the break? Grant or Ron?
I will.
You guys. Ron will. Okay. All right. So we're going to run another Tandy Assembly sponsor promotion thing here and take a quick commercial break, and then we'll come back with Grant Leighty's newbie question of the week.
Assembly would like to thank our sponsor, Boise Pete. Boise is co-author of CoCo, The Colorful History of Tandy's Underdog Computer, available from Amazon.com. This book is the go-to source for information about the history of the Tandy color computer. In addition to being a color computer historian, Boise has been a longtime supporter and developer of OS 9 and Nitrous 9 operating systems. He is also a software developer for Cloud 9. Thank you to Boise Pete for being a Tandy Assembly sponsor. Between 1977 and 1994, Tandy and Radio Shack produced a wide array of prolific personal and business computers. Chances are you've used one. And now there's a new event designed to celebrate all of these computers in one place. Introducing Tandy Assembly. Come see your favorite computers, or maybe some that you missed. October 7th and 8th. In Ohio's first capital city, Chillicothe. See presentations by TRS-80 creator Don French. Creator of Dogstar Adventure, Lance Miklas. And Scott Adams of Adventure International. For details, visit our webpage at www.tandyassembly.com. Some assembly is required.
All right, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is a professional show, a very well-produced show, so we've got things like infographics and theme songs here. And what you're looking at right now is the introduction to a segment that we call NewbieTALK with Grant Leighty, featuring your newbie question of the week. And on that note, take it away, Grant Leighty.
Thank you, Steve. So I have a basic question today. If I would like to make a game for the CoCo, what is the best language to use? Basic, OS 9, assembly language, or machine language?
Which one do you know?
John Linville says, which one do you know?
I also think it depends on the kind of game you want to make. I mean, you can make an adventure game a lot easier in basic, and speed isn't that critical. You're not trying to move a ton of memory or graphics around, so I mean that works perfectly fine. If you want to write a really large text adventure game, then OS 9 is nice because you can access hard drive images, etc. If you want to do arcade games, there's some limited arcade games you could probably do in BASIC if they're designed right within the limitations of the speed that BASIC has. But basically, you're looking at assembler machine language at that point, and I would consider assembly language and machine language to be the same core, and nobody's going to program it in raw machine language. They'll use an assembler.
Steve Bjork just chimed in. He says, assembly only. And Nick Marentes says, I have an OS 9 question.
Ease of use.
There you go. I don't know that there is a single answer to that, because I think Curtis touched on that too. So like right now, the first game I'm going to write is going to be in BASIC, because that's the only language that I know currently.
And for those who don't think you can write good games in BASIC, I would just point to Jim Gary.
Yeah. Jim Gary was mentioned, I don't know how many dozens of times this month on the CoCo Crew podcast, right? So he's
about stakes, I think.
Yeah.
Well, if you have a puzzle or a strategy type game, you don't necessarily need to use assembler. If you've got, your Twitch type game, then assembler is the only way to go.
And
also,
may I speak up?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, okay. Just trying to make, not to step on each other. Yeah, you can do some games in BASIC, but even some of the puzzle games, as simple as Tetris, I could run Tetris in BASIC, but your response time and stuff to be able to make it smooth is really enjoyable. It takes assembly to be fast enough on the machine. So yes, you can do BASIC for certain things. Assembly is going to be better for most cases, and 99% of the time, because you do have some advantages even in adventure games and stuff with doing assembly. The speed and this extra things you could add in that you probably wouldn't want to do with BASIC. So
yeah, it depends. It has to be within your design limitations of what you're trying to achieve. Like if you're trying to do like a 60 frame per second real-time game of any sort, then you're pretty well locked into assembly.
Right, it's there. I do have one game I do in BASIC, but it's just using flat switching in most cases for the animation.
Okay, somebody's trying to call and it's not coming through. And I'm also getting what sounds like a stinking Google Hangout sound. I'm sorry about that. I got some weird sounds coming through my computer right now that I can't control.
Yeah, anybody who's trying to call in, please call Steve directly. Don't call the CoCoTALK.
Or a previous group. Yeah, it just kind of doesn't work out that way.
Another type of game programming could be a hybrid where things that are too slow to be done in BASIC, you then have machine language routines to do. Stuff that Simon Jonassen's working on, like the sound routines, theoretically, those being on interrupt, they could be loaded somewhere and be running in the background, and you just, load sets of data and then just flip data sets so that it plays a different tune while you're doing your stuff in BASIC.
Yeah, and Simon actually did do that. Bruce Moore was going to experiment with that with his Forest of Doom. It slowed down BASIC a little bit too much for what he wanted, but he had it working basically. So, and there's also different versions of BASIC too. Like BASIC 09 is definitely faster than Disk Extended BASIC. Not to the point where it's assembly or anything, but you can definitely do something a bit more arcadey there than you could otherwise.
And what's the best book to learn assembly language and machine language on?
It depends, I guess. I used more than one when I was learning. I used William Barden Jr.'s, which is the one that Mark's holding up right now. I also used Don and Kurt Inman's because that actually was a better explanation of graphics and sound to me than Barden did. Lance Leventhal's book is as good as a Bible type thing to hold in the background. There's also the 6809 cookbook. There's the Rodney Zach's book. There's multiple ones available. So, depending on your learning.
Most of them are in the archive.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't think there's one single book. I don't think there's one single answer. So there's lots of different tools, right? So there's Basic 09. We had Wayne Campbell. We had Wayne Campbell show us some Basic 09 stuff recently, and Basic 09 works, primarily like the normal Basic language does, but does run significantly faster. It's kind of a pre-compiled version of Basic, so that is an option to get more speed than you could with Disk Extended Color Basic. We have C as a language for the CoCo, if you know that language. I just heard
Pascal. There's a bunch.
Just heard about the Pascal one on the podcast. So there's different languages, and I don't think there's a right answer. I think the obvious answer is if it's written in an assembly or closer to metal, it's going to perform faster. But the level of complexity to get to that point and developing that code is up to your skill set.
I'd be interested from some of the other assembly language programmers here too. The Barden book and all the other ones we mentioned are good, especially for the CoCo 1 and 2. But the CoCo 3, there's a whole bunch of new graphics modes and interrupts and stuff to use. What have you guys used as your learning for that?
Well, we didn't learn CoCo 3. We learned the CoCo back in the day. So we knew assembler from the CoCo 1 and 2. When the CoCo 3 came out, we basically looked at the changes in the memory map and just went on from there. I don't really have any CoCo. And
all the gimme tricks and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Like, was that all just by trial and error, or where did you guys look this up?
Oh, well, the Tandy technical, the repair manual, the one they sold, that was pretty well. As soon as the Color Computer 3 came out, I ordered it straight away from Tandy and had the memory map right from the start, and just basically, essentially, you learn 6809 assembly language, and that lets you use a CoCo 1, 2, 3, whatever. Then you have to have the memory maps. The memory maps are basically like the road map, and that's what you play with. That's what you use. So,
yeah, because I know some people want to, like, if they start into the retro computing hobby now, never had any of these before, and they want to learn assembly language, they want to jump right into the CoCo 3 stuff. They don't want to deal with CoCo 1 and 2, limited graphics, limited colors. They want to jump straight to the CoCo 3, and I'm trying to think, other than the Lawrence Teppold books, where he did the original CoCo 1 and 2 book, and then he had an addendum book, which is just strictly CoCo 3 additionals. That made a good companion set that you could do. The Super Extended Unraveled Basic by Spectral's another one that gives you a bit of a hint, but other than that, I can't think of anything that's CoCo 3 specific for a good jumping in point.
No, it is a bit, if you're a first-time programmer, it is a bit of a jump, though. I mean, I don't recommend it.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like the MMU gets complicated. And
there's a lot more concepts to understand than the basic CoCo 1 and 2 VDG screen. It was a lot more linear and simpler to play with, and for a beginner, that's really where you should start. Jumping straight into high-res bitmap modes and MMUs and all that, interrupts and all that, that's further on down the track. And I've had the last 30 years it's taken me to get to this point, so it's not something you do in a couple of months. So
okay. I just was wondering, because I know a lot of people have asked me, and they want to jump straight in the CoCo 3 because they just, there's so much more capability there, and I'm kind of the same as you, one, there wasn't any really good reference books to use that as a starting point. All the good reference books for when you're starting an assembler, like the Barden book and the Don and Kurt Inman book, are all basically CoCo 1 and 2 stuff, with the one exception being Lawrence Stepholtz. But his is a little bit more advanced technique-wise, so it's not that easy to start with.
I think Sockmaster's GIME reference or Gimme reference, which is available online, is pretty good. It will give you all the bits. It will tell you what's what on the GIME, the Gimme.
But that's another memory map. That doesn't really teach assembly language at all. It tells you what all the registers.
It's a reference. Yeah,
that's right.
It tells you what bit does what. Yeah, but you like you say, Nick, you truly need to know 6809 before you start pilfering with this kind of.
Well,
I agree. I would say, you know, that for somebody who's just starting out learning assembly, I would recommend that they do one of two things: either write USR routines for, you know, disk extended BASIC, and so have a lot of their program in BASIC, and then write little routines in machine code that they hook to, and practice using that. You know, and this is avoiding, you know, so you avoid touching the low-level hardware. And the other way to do it is actually, and I know, you know, this kind of caused a groan from Nick Marentes over there, but to write for OS 9, because then you don't have to deal with the hardware. You're dealing with OS calls, which are much simpler to deal with, and it makes it easier for a beginner to write a simple program. You know?
I actually have to agree with that too. I mean, you're not going to be writing like a high-end arcade game in OS 9 anyway, but just to learn assembler, it'll teach you how to use the basic registers and stuff like that, but you don't have to worry about how do I print to a screen right off the bat. You can just say, I'm going to point to a string, and I just call the iString or a write command or system call, and it'll do the writing for you. You don't have to worry about it. So you can kind of learn at a slower pace, just to learn how the registers work and, you know, how you store memory and all that kind of stuff. But you don't have to worry about all the I/O and the graphics and all that kind of stuff. It'll be more of a slower pace to get into it. So you get a feeling of accomplishment, I think, a lot more than, you know, it takes you 3 days to figure out how to clear the screen.
Yeah, Stevie, you need to archive this show for eternity, because we just had Nick Marentes recommend OS 9.
May I speak up?
Ease of use. Well, you know, the thing that's coming to my mind right now is I completely forgot that Ron said he wanted to go first. We were supposed to be doing Ron's Garage right now. Sorry about that, Ron. It's a great question, and Steve Bjork has joined us too. Steve, are you there?
Hey, yep, I'm here.
Okay.
The other thing that you guys haven't covered is to look at other people's source code or disassembled code for other programs. See how they've done it. Use their skills to build upon your own skills.
Yep, I have to agree with that too.
Yes, that's why, you know, Unraveled was just a great thing for us as programmers, and Rainbow Grid and disassemblies, and Steve, I would always closely follow your articles that you would have published or your seminars at the Rainbow Fest. I would always make sure that I'd get there. You know, some of the stuff I didn't understand, and some of the fact that, oh yeah, okay, now that's what he was talking about. You know, years later, but it was graciously appreciate the contributions you did to the community. It helped.
Yeah, I still remember doing some of those CoCo talks. One of the things I was very big on was basically doing object-oriented programming and assembly, and a lot of people were just kind of like, I'd get done with the thing, and I have a room full of faces just staring at me like, huh? What? But, you know, object-oriented coding is now standard.
And it's you know, very useful depending on the level of complexity of your games, and you know how many things you have going on to do it in that way. You know, treat it as an object within your assembly language code. So, hey, thought leader.
Now, Steve, I've got, speaking of this whole thing, I kind of think I mentioned it briefly on the CoCo forums on the Facebook, but I was really thinking that what would be good is to have some people that are learning assembly language now put together questions, and then have a few of us that have a good experience with assembly sit down and answer the questions.
Yeah.
I think it would go a long ways into getting this information out, but also it creates the correct criteria. And I see a big thumbs up over there in the corner.
Yeah, yeah.
And Steve, I will mention now, what I really wasn't going to make it public, is I'm working on a series of introductory, very low-level assembly language starting points for people. And so I have planned out 2 lessons. I hope to make them very, very short, bite-sized, and start out with just learning one of the environments to work with that be commonly available, and just kind of step by step, and then make it available as a platform now that it can ask questions after they've seen a little bit. So some of that's being worked on. I don't know how fast I'll get it done, but again, with the same kind of ideas of getting some ideas out there, in a forum, and then people can start to ask questions.
In all my years, when people have come to me and ask me about assembly language and stuff like that, and can you write a book or do these other things, it's kind of like my biggest problem is I know the subject so well, I don't know how to teach it to somebody that doesn't know the subject. That's the reason why I'm suggesting if we have somebody putting together the questions,
right.
Hey, I can come up with the answers,
Right.
but I can't come up with the questions on stuff that I learned 40 or 50 years ago.
Exactly.
I totally hear you, Steve. I totally hear you. But for me, I learned assembly from literally nothing on the 6502 on the C64 back in the day, and I tend to take my time to teach other people 6809 and the intricacies of 6809, just because I want other people to move it forward. I mean, I can program wicked 6809, but I can also sync to any level necessary for anyone to learn something.
It's a good skill.
You definitely have a skill I've never been able to accomplish.
Right, right.
I like Simon.
It is definitely, a skill level to be able to think at that level, lower level, and that's one of the issues that I'm trying to deal with trying to put together some lesson plans.
I mean, I can look at a piece of code and say, well, oh my god, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? But I don't think like that. I'm thinking, all right, you're not on my level, so I better just regress, and okay, we can do that, and we can do that, and we can do that, and we change it this way, and all of a sudden someone gets the concept of what and or and XOR and everything else is, and for them to be able to learn that and then produce something for themselves is paramount.
Yeah, whether it's using the most optimized possible techniques in 609 is not what you're trying to strive for. You're trying to just get to understand the concepts and to be able to accomplish something that they're trying to accomplish.
Exactly.
And yeah, Steve, I have the exact same problem. I usually try to over-explain things, and I get a bit too technical, and then I've just lost them, and you get this glazed look on their eyes, and that's the end of that.
It's like, I got my brain.
And that's very, definite valid things on teaching, and where I have a little advantage is I have had a little bit of formal training in teaching, and I've done some teaching, with people of a large, different levels of skill sets, which was the reason I was working on trying to produce a little series as a starting point for people to learn. And I know there's going to become questions that's going to be advanced in technology, what people I ask. And so it is getting that time where it's something we need in our community. I think we needed it for a long time, but I think it's going to work to happen with people like Steve, like you and Simon, and several others in the community, very willing to reach out and help people with questions. And hopefully I will be able to get a few more lessons plans done so I can have a continuity in this and kind of start out with a introductory, very basic idea, because I'm still working on trying to come up with a method to help people visualize the difference in programming and assembly, and you're thinking in registers and memory locations instead of just variables and high level things, because that's kind of that mindset you have to be able to get into before getting and doing things.
Yeah. Now, I was going to ask, does anybody know if the complete Dennis Bathory kits, he did that Learning the 6809 tape-based thing, which also had example programs and stuff where it was a lot of voice recording stuff. I know somebody was digitizing all that and they were going to put on the archive. Has that been done yet? I haven't had a chance to check. That might be a good starting point for others, too. A different way to learn rather than just reading, where you're actually listening to Dennis explain things.
Actually, he has them as MP3s on his own website.
Okay, so they are digitized and up and ready to go?
Yeah, if you want to download them, yeah.
Well, my plan of action was actually to combine that, do a very short segment, talk, visual, give you all that whole kind of learning experience in one point, so you can see it, you can have some sample code, you can see a result, and so they kind of combined all of that, and what he did years ago was a great thing.
So, Grant, did we muddy the water?
Yes, it's very muddy. But I did learn one thing, though. It's like OS 9 is definitely not the place to go to make a game.
Oh, yeah, like anything else, it depends on the game.
It depends on the game.
Just like using BASIC versus assembly, it depends on the game. You have some games you can do perfectly well in BASIC.
It all really depends on how much resources you're trying to use on the computer, how much CPU time is being used on graphics and like that. If it's really simple stuff, yeah, OS 9's fine for it. I mean, I've managed to do an OS 9 bouncing ball demo that people immediately then poured it to Disextended BASIC, which I couldn't understand why. But you can do some pretty good graphics in there, but OS 9 still will get in your way.
Yeah, if you need the bare metal of the machine, I for critical timing stuff where you need the full speed of the machine, I quite agree. OS 9 will, by definition of what it does, it will get in your way and slow things down. You can, of course, write something that will launch under OS 9 and then take the machine over. There is somewhat of a point for that because you might be able to just want to run the game or whatever from that environment, which is convenient. But generally speaking, if you're going to write something that is high performance, that needs the full, performance of the machine, OS 9 is probably not the platform you want to use. If you want to write something that you want to be able to run while switching between, doing that, and then, maybe, go to another screen, do something, come back, and, then like a turn-based game is an example of something that you might be, like Rogue or Sub Simulator. Then OS 9 is a perfect platform for that, and you can have the machine be available to do something else while you're playing the game if you want. So, yeah, it depends a lot on the game.
But we all agree that... I'm sorry.
It also depends because OS 9, the libraries or whatever that are there, don't really utilize all the functions available in the Gimme chip for that matter. I mean, the Gimme chip has various video modes, it has other fancy things, other techniques that you can use, but I mean, you are restricted to what has
what's
been
supported
created.
by the API calls.
Yeah, otherwise you have to write your own code and bypass all that, and then you have to question, well, what's the advantage of doing it under OS 9? You might as well just start learning assembly right from the start, since you are trying to take full control of all the abilities of the Gimme chip.
But that's just like BASIC. Like BASIC doesn't support all the Gimme modes. It doesn't support horizontal scrolling. Doesn't support 200 to 225 line unless you patch it.
Well,
I mean, same thing.
Yeah. So I mean, there's really no difference there. And assembly language program really has, as per se, strictly speaking, nothing to do with the Gimme chip. The Gimme chip is an I/O device. When you're talking about programming in assembly language, you're talking about talking to the CPU, which, really 6809 assembly language runs on a color computer and it runs on a bunch of other machines too. When you're talking about a Gimme, you're talking about a particular hardware I/O device. That's like talking about programming for the RS-232 pack.
And that goes back to my original statement, whereby that's why there isn't any books that I can recommend that specifically are teaching assembly language on a CoCo 3, because there is no need. You just have to learn 6, 8, or 9 assembly language, and then you basically work on the memory map, and that's the part that's unique to the CoCo 3, knowing the ins and outs of the gimme chip. The 6, 8, or 9 assembly code is just the language you use to talk to it all. Once you learn that, whether it's on a CoCo 1, CoCo 2, whatever, that's the same as CoCo 3. It's just that now you have a new memory map, new I/O capabilities.
To write your code for, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's why I said you have to learn hardware too. So it's not just walking in there and learning a language, but it's learning how all this all pieces together.
That's right.
Agreed.
Yep. There you go. So which one are you going to do, Grant?
I think I'm going to stick with basic.
Ease of use.
I use basic a lot. I think basic is very useful still. Whenever I design a game, I usually all the tools I may use, whether it's for designing the sprites or doing the sound, I just tap them out in RS-DOS RS Basic. I don't need speed at that point. I just need the tool to do the job. And basic is quick to put together, slap together, and away you go. The end result from what's created with those tools will be the assembly language program.
Yeah, because at that point, what you're trying to do is rapid application development. You're trying to get the program done fast, not the program running fast.
That's right, yeah.
So you're saying you actually code some of your stuff in BASIC first, and then move it to machine code?
No. The actual code for the game is done in machine language, but any tools I need for creating, say, a map for a game, like Popstar Pilot had, I had to create an editor so I can actually design the level maps, all the terrain, all the objects that the player will see when he's playing the game. Well, I do that in BASIC, and I edit it all together in a BASIC program. That BASIC program will then create a map, or data anyway, that I then put straight into the actual game itself.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, you make your development tools in BASIC because you can do it quickly, but programming them to get them up and running. You don't need speed as much.
You need the speed.
Yeah, I still say that probably the best environment to learn strictly machine code, for the reasons that were laid out earlier, is if you're learning machine code for the first time. OS 9 is a very good environment to do that, because you don't have to worry about access. You can just learn the machine code and then worry about later moving over and accessing the hardware directly.
I think for a lot of beginners, though, they have to learn OS 9 as well before they get into all that. Otherwise, they don't.
At least some of it.
Download one of the pre-built images out there that I've got, and it's got an assembler already on there, and an assembler works.
Yes, but you have to also learn the OS 9 library.
Right.
Yeah. There's only a few calls really that you would deal with when you're writing as a beginner to just learn assembly code. Well, let's see. Print statement. Okay, well, OS 9, the $$ print command and that call and how it works. If you're trying to write in machine code for BASIC, you've got to learn all the basic entry points, which is probably a lot harder than learning a few of those system calls under OS 9.
No,
I disagree.
That's probably relative to the individual, though. But so, Grant, what's your takeaway from this?
Well, I think that you, first of all, from what I'm gathering, it looks like basic is what you're going to have to learn first, just to get the basic foundation, and then depending on your flavor, you would either go OS 9 or just jump right into the assembly language itself.
All right. So,
and one technique that I've used is actually had somebody write a game in BASIC or write a program BASIC. Then what we did, step by step, recreated the basic commands in assembly.
Yeah. You can create your own print routine, and then once you've done it once, you can reuse that bit of code in every other future program.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially creating your own libraries.
Yes, so we have luck. Being a Tetris clone, And so I thought, well, okay, this might be writable in the BASIC, and it wasn't planned to be a commercial game. Okay, and it was just designed to be a gift to my brother for Christmas. And so I wrote it in BASIC, and it ran in BASIC. It just, I wasn't happy with how it ran in BASIC. And so it was converted, but that was the only thing game that I did that way. But it was the idea, you know, the goal wasn't a commercial production game when I started on it. And the fact of, you know, if you can't write a loop to do the print statement in, you know, straight assembly language, you're not going to understand the OS9 calls. It is definitely a bit of higher overlearning yet, in my opinion. And of course, everybody has a different mindset, the way they think. And so OS9 might be easier for most people, or for some other people. But with my teaching experience that I have, my judgment would be not probably much. But for some, yes.
I've noticed, typically I see that a lot of people haven't really looked at the documentation for the OS9 system calls yet. They say that. But they actually, they're pretty simple to use from a machine language programming. Basically, you know, there's using the OS9 assembler, it takes care of doing a macro for the software interrupt to call the call for you. So you just say OS9, which is the macro, space, and then the name of the call you're doing. And before you call the call, just like the basic ROM routines, you just have to make sure that you have your entry parameters set up for that particular call, which are, you know, pretty well documented in the OS9 manual as far as what the call parameters are.
I don't think anybody's questioning how easy it is to use, but it is another level to learn, whether it be OS9 or it be developing under Windows or the Mac OS, whatever the current version is, or iOS. It is a level that the person has to learn.
True. But you either have to do that, you have to do one of a few things. You either have to do that, or you have to program and learn the ROM calls and their entry routines, and they aren't as well documented.
No, you don't need to learn the ROM calls. Just don't use them.
Or if you don't use the ROM calls, then you have to learn the hardware and how to write to it directly. Or, you know, you need to, you know, which is my other recommendation for somebody who doesn't want to touch OS9 and they want to. The other option is, which I don't consider as good, but it does, you know, it is a good option, is to write USR routines for BASIC or subroutines, and so have a little BASIC program and have you call your little assembly language subroutine and return back to BASIC with a result.
And that's exactly how I started.
That's how I started.
You write a game in BASIC.
Yeah.
You write a game in BASIC.
Strategy.
Yeah, you write a game in BASIC, and then you look at the parts of the BASIC program which are too slow, and you write a subroutine in assembly language to speed up that aspect of the game, and you just do a USR to, or whatever, a USR to that subroutine. That way you can have your whole game, and you're learning assembly language in smaller chunks.
No, you kind of baby step your transition. All right.
Yeah, like my Olympic decathlon game I submitted to Rainbow, which is when I was very first learning assembly language. I had one assembly language routine, and that was to scroll the ground on the bottom of the screen because that was way too slow using get put.
In my early TRSA days, I came out with Lightpin and software that did music and stuff like that. They were all user calls, and even for the CoCo, I came out with some, Lightpin software for the CoCo that was a user call, and of course the infamous mouse code that uses the high-res joystick routine.
Now, the thing that's caused me personally to pull my hair out when doing user calls, and I know how to write it, you know, assembly code, is, well, let's just say, have you ever tried to return a string back to BASIC from a user routine? You know, the format for doing that is obtuse, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's not beat this one any longer. I think this horse horse's grandchildren are dead at this point.
It depends on what color horse you prefer. Is bottom line.
I have got one OS9 question though. If this is the tech segment, I've got one more question.
OS9. if we can change topics off of the programming, then yes, please.
Okay.
In my my cleanup, I'm packing up all my magazines, ready to move to new premises, and I've come across a magazine I had called Pipelines, which is I think it's a magazine edited by Microware. Yeah. So I've got an issue. I've just got one issue here, Volume 8, Number 1, and on the cover, it talks about Atomic OS 9 and OS 9 version 3.
That's OSK. That's 68,000 OS 9.
Well, they're saying OS 9. So is that OS?
Yeah, that was their generic term for everything until they did OS 9000. So the 68,000 version was called OS 9/68000, but they just called it OS 9.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just thought that the color computer got shortchanged here.
Yeah.
Yeah, they put 68,000 in it. That was one thing.
Ron, you still got time?
And talk about doing an OS 9 version 3 with Nitrous 9, etc. But it's, to my knowledge, I'm pretty sure, never been completed, and not even to the point where it's really runnable.
Ron, you still good for a segment?
Sure.
All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to come back with Ron's Garage. And Grant, thanks for the question. And hopefully you were able to glean something from this.
Everybody's opinions differ. I think that's what he gleaned from.
Yes. All right, we're gonna take a quick break, and we're gonna come back, and we're gonna see what's doing this week in Ron's Garage.
Tandy Assembly would like to thank our sponsor, Boyson Tech. Vintage computer systems, gaming consoles, and parts. Boyson Tech repairs, refurbishes, and sells vintage and game consoles. Be sure to visit them on Facebook. Just search for Boyson Tech. BOYSONTECH. Thank you to Boyson Tech for being a Tandy Assembly sponsor.
Hi, this is John Linville.
And Neil Blanchard.
We are the CoCo crew. I hope you're enjoying watching Stevie Stroh play video games, especially the CoCo games. And when you're done with that, check out our podcast at CoCoCrew.org.
At home, at the beach, in your car, at the shop, at the office, anywhere you enjoy fine audio programming. It's North America's premier source for color computer news, the CoCo Crew Podcast.
This is John Linville.
And Neil Blanchard.
And we are the CoCo Crew. I hope it's going to be a great show.
Join John and Neil each month as they bring the latest news about the color computer, Dragon, MC10, and others. It's the CoCo Crew Podcast. Visit www.cococrew.org and listen today.
You're listening to the CoCo Crew Podcast.
I missed that theme song.
All right, everybody, we are back for another segment of Ron's Garage with a peek into the past featuring the vintage computing collection of Ron Delvaux. Take it away, Ron.
Okay.
No pressure.
All right, you guys yell. I don't see myself up there, but if I am I up there?
You are the spotlight of the show right now, sir.
Okay, well, I don't see myself on there. Anyway, on your I don't know if you can see this, but I found on Google Play a CoCo text adventure program that has three. It has Bedlam, Racket 2, and Pyramid 2000.
Okay.
That you can play when you're sitting at the doctor's office on your droid.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. It has a neat little interface. I have a green line on my screen, so I don't know if you can see it very well.
I can see the cover art right now, yes.
Yeah, and when you go into it, it has a little interface with arrows and stuff. Anyway, that's something for you to check out.
CoCoTALK Adventures in the Google Play Store.
Yes. And there's also, I also have a Model 1 emulator on there. I don't know where that is real quick to find. But anyway, if you go to, if you right now can flip to my my garage, and there's a video there of my garage, which we can view real quick.
We will do that right now. Hold on 1 second. Let's get to the page. Ron's garage. Let's go full screen.
I don't know why I can't see what you're doing.
You need to click on the. There's different people in the Skype call, so click on the one that's got me. Click on my name and make that the big window. I think. Okay, so in your garage, I was keeping up with you today. So this came up in the Facebook group where somebody's coming up with these labels to print on SDC cards. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and you've got some of those there.
I did a couple.
Yeah.
I still don't see you.
Okay. Can anybody else see my thing? Can you guys see me?
I can see it.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, it's also coming through on the live too.
There's a bunch of round logos on the bottom. DLBN, you know, all them, but no Stevie Stroke.
Mine's a white box. It should be the white box that's showing off the Facebook page right now.
And I do have that problem. I can't seem to find you on the bottom of the Skype call for some reason.
Nope.
Yeah, I got the same thing.
Speaking out the number of people on the call.
I do not see you.
All right, I don't know how to address that though.
You just need a wider monitor, Ron. That would solve it.
Yeah.
All right, so here's your video. Here's a peek inside Ron's garage.
Wow, look at all that original
packaging. Basically, I have three computers set up. One's a CoCo 3, one is a CoCo 2 with a CoCo 3 keyboard, and it has composite in it. And the third one is
telescopes. Yeah. Here's the silver CoCo with the silver multi-pack.
Yeah.
Got a couple of CoCos on top of a boombox there. A stack of printers. The Beatles. The Beatles.
Yep.
A couple of MC10s. There you go. Here's a CoCo 3. Another CoCo 2. I couldn't tell exactly what that last computer was. Yeah. Nice printers. A lot of multi-packs. Dual floppies. Monitor switches here. Yeah, you got a lot of nice stuff in there.
Yep. It's my playground.
Yeah, I'll roll the video one more time. Okay, you got a dragon in the box there too. Okay, so this is that's a CoCo 3. Okay, connected to a monitor. It's a CoCo 3 connected to a flat panel. You've got the little koala pad there. Very nice. Yeah. Here's your CoCo silver CoCo 1 with a nicer CoCo 2 keyboard. Yep.
Yep.
So that's the actual Ron's garage. So when you pull things out of here, this is where they're coming from, right? Part of it.
Another garage in the house. There's another garage with a bunch of stuff in there, and a lot of my Model 4s, Model 3, my I have two Tandy 2000s, two 1200 HDs.
Wow.
Monitors.
John Linville, next time you have Tandy Assembly, you should just have it at Ron's garage.
Yeah, really.
Everything's already there, set up, ready to go. You just need attendance.
Is it all Tandy stuff?
All we really need is an invitation from the venue.
New location.
I have one computer that's a AT that doesn't work. I don't know why it doesn't work now, but it used to. It was a Epson.
Yeah, I remember those.
But most of your stuff is all Tandy stuff?
Yeah, and it pretty much all works. I have one Tandy 1200 HD that doesn't work. But the rest, all this stuff works. You turn it on, it works. Model 3, Model 4s, Model 4P, Model 1.
And it's all original. You're the original owner.
Yep. Some of the stuff I got in I bought, a person died, and the brother had his estate, and he gave me, and that's how I got the Model 4s and Model 3 and CGP 220, got some printers and all kinds of EEPROM burner and all kinds of stuff went for $300. You know, just
wow.
Yeah, it was amazing.
That is
amazing. That's back in the mid 90s or so.
Yeah.
And I just carry this stuff with me everywhere, from Rochester, New York, to here in Arizona, and then now I'm 50 miles from where I used to live in Arizona, in Fountain Hills.
Well, let me ask you a question about being in Arizona and having things in a garage. What's the climate like there?
Well, it gets hot, you know.
Yeah.
We get 120 in the summer, and I keep some stuff in both garages and some stuff in the house that I cherish that I don't want to be in the heat.
Right. And what's the humidity like? Is Arizona more dry?
12, 14%.
Because the problem we have with garages stuff in Florida is you can actually get like moldy type stuff. We've got a lot of humidity. So when you get that moisture and that heat together, you leave things in cardboard boxes and stuff like that, they can really, start to gunk up. You got to be really careful.
It's heat.
I've had
heat and dry.
The problem for me here in Miami, I have to go in my garage and wring the water out of the air with a towel.
Wow.
We have I have my in-laws live in Palm Bay, Florida. So we wind up going to Florida often. So I'll come see you sometime.
Yeah, let me know next time you're coming down.
Yeah, and if we have some kind of CoCo assembly down there, that'd be fun.
Yeah, we'll have to figure out a let's get through Tandy Assembly first, and then we'll figure a southeast pilgrimage event somehow.
Now, on one of my future, probably won't have one next weekend, but weekend after, is it okay to show my Model 4P or
of course
Model 4? I've been looking at these suckers sitting there and thinking maybe I should fire them up and and just throw a DOS on there. And
well, let me just, before I give you a blanket answer, yes, I need to check this with David Ladd real quick. Hey, David, is that okay?
They have floppies.
There you go.
I'm not touching that.
The timing of doing that in 2 weeks would be perfect, because next week is Tandy Assembly, and as a follow-up of all the machines that people could have seen at Tandy Assembly, you can demonstrate some of them that we're not familiar with.
Yeah. That's a great.
I have a 2000 I can set up, and 4P and 3 and Mod 1. Just have it set up, or whatever. Whatever.
You don't happen to have Ghana Buana for the 2000, because I'd like to see that. I've never seen that. I didn't even know it existed. Oh, darn.
Did it exist for the 2000?
Yeah, Steve mentioned that he ported it to it officially.
Interesting.
I have a bunch of stuffy software, like, spreadsheets, databases, stuff like that.
Boring.
I might even have like CPM or something for it, or I don't know.
We'll do an hour-long demonstration of DBase 4 just for Steve.
God. That's like talking about assembly, huh?
No, assembly's way more fun than DBase.
Right.
I wonder if Buana for the 2000 would run under DOSBox on it as an emulator.
I'm sure it would.
Do you still have copies of it, Steve? Or
I'll have to dig through and see if I can find it. But actually, I did Ghana Buana for the PC, or I should say the 2000, before I did Ghana Buana for the CoCo.
Oh, interesting.
Really? Yeah, I've got a copy of your Ghana Buana, which I bought back in the day for the color computer, and I still run it from time to time. And it's one of the ones that the games actually use the speech pack a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I think it was the first.
I've never seen the copy for the 2000, the IBM PC, not the IBM, the Tandy PC version. If you I don't suppose if you could maybe send a copy of that to me. I'd like to look at it at some point if you could find it.
I'll have to look for it in November.
What CPU is the 2000 running?
8186.
186.
Yeah.
Yeah, a 186 CPU.
Yeah, so it's a bit better than the 8088, the 8086.
Basically, it was identical to the 8086, except for a lot of the support chips were actually on the chip.
Yeah, so
maybe next week I'll open up the 2000 and you guys can look in there.
Interesting.
See the chip.
I'm guessing, Steve, the sales weren't too great for that because that was more of a business-oriented machine, wasn't it?
Exactly. Actually, I think it was more of a legal issue they were trying to avoid.
Okay.
Also, they wanted the PC guys to pay for half the development cost of Gondwana because I included that comic book.
Oh, right. So the comic book was designed before the CoCo version as well, then?
Yep.
That wasn't CoCo unique? Okay.
In conjunction. And what was interesting is the artist for the comic book was the same one that was doing the Indiana Jones series.
Neat. Yeah. You can see the influence there.
What was the big deal about logo back in the day? The language logo, or does anybody
What about
know
it?
That? It seemed like Tandy pushed that a lot, or was it's a kids thing, or?
I think it was an educational language, wasn't it, to teach people?
Yeah, that's what they were basically pushing it for, and not just on the CoCo. I mean, the Apple II had logo and stuff too. So
that was the first language I learned in third grade.
Well, the other language they were pushing back there for educational was Pascal.
Yeah, we used Apple Pascal at school.
I can't see that being used as an educational language unless you want to scare somebody away from computers forever.
Come on. Now, I worked on the Pascal project back down San Diego, and interesting enough, Pascal was written in Pascal.
Here comes that chicken and egg thing.
Yeah. The only thing is you couldn't use any new improvements to the language until it was at least 2 versions old.
Yeah, I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it was a bad language. I've written stuff in Pascal, but it's not one that I would recommend for a computer beginner.
Well, you also like OS 9, but we won't get into it.
Shots fired.
Hey, no touching OS 9.
Learning assembly in OS 9 is not something I would recommend for a computer beginner either.
Yeah,
but
seriously,
just starting out in a computer, I'd recommend starting out in a basic interpreter and learning the concepts of programming there.
In addition to that, they had languages back then such as Forth, Lisp. I mean, there's a whole ton of languages that everybody started jumping on the bandwagon that said, this is perfect for microprocessors, this is perfect for teaching kids. And Pascal was one of them where the universities really got on board.
Yeah, and some of the high schools did too. Like a lot of our local high schools here went Pascal for a few years.
Yeah, I used to program Pascal as well, but did the CoCo version of Pascal have inline assembly like the 8086, 8186, 286 version?
Well, they compiled to Pico, so probably not.
No. By the way, my fingerprints were all over the turtle graphics on the Pascal. That's the part I worked on when I was at the university.
Neat. And the turtle graphics is what it was called, was logo, right? Because the logo language, you were moving a turtle on the screen.
Yeah. It was kind of
logo,
central to Pascal.
Logo, I would say, is much more of a beginner's language that's kid-friendly, etc. for somebody. Sorry. Yeah.
Very, very cool. What is Mark Overholser holding up?
Apple
Mark
logo.
Holding up a
I use that.
Apple logo. Okay.
Maybe I should go and get a prologue book.
As long as it's not Forth, that one just boggled my mind. I just couldn't get the concept of how to even do math. It just seems so backwards. What is it, Polish notation it's called or something?
Yep, Polish notation.
Yeah. I never could wrap my head around that.
Steve Wozniak was a strong supporter of reverse Polish notation on the Apple computer.
He was a HP calculator engineer.
You got it. That's why.
Yeah, that's right, because the calculators use that same notation.
Especially HPs.
But yeah, some of them did.
It's hard to find one that doesn't use RPN.
And I remember somebody brought a calculator to the Homebrew Computer Society and showed it to Woz that used parentheses instead of reverse Polish notation, and it was kind of like he was showing him the devil.
Hey, how many of you guys owned a Pulsar watch?
Oh, no, I'm not familiar with that one.
I did a long time ago. I don't know where it went.
Yeah, I had one till it quit.
It
was pretty
quit
cool
working. Mine quit working at some point. I forget. You know.
Yeah, mine.
Well, Steve, maybe we should end this rat hole and get back to the subject.
I don't even know what the subject has been. But yeah, Tandy Assembly was the original theme for today's show. Now that's good. So Ron, thank you again for another segment. That's great. Ron's Garage got good stuff. Yeah, we're always interested in seeing what you have. It's all cool vintage retro stuff, and it's your segment. And the great thing about having your own segment is you show off whatever the hell you want. As long as we clear it of David Ladd and his people. He's got an entourage now, so. So good stuff.
All Ron's stuff has floppies in it, so.
There you go. Yep. So I do want to show off something that I think is nice to see too, which is the fact that we got a nice little write-up in the Glenside newsletter this month. And so this comes out. This Glenside, as you know, is a club who hosts CoCo Fest. And so they did write up CoCoTALK in here. I need to find the section right now. So it starts right here. So by John Mark Mobley and Steve Strobridge and Mark Overholser. So we got a couple different quotes in here. So, and he starts off by saying this, okay, we need to make sure we clear some of these definitions. So there is a CoCo chat, which is the internet relay chat. There is CoCo Crew, which is a monthly podcast. There is the CoCo List, which is the CoCo mailing list. There is CoCoTALK, which is a weekly live YouTube show, and now there's the audio version of CoCoTALK that is the podcast version. So no confusion there.
This is as complicated as OS9 now.
Yeah, ease of use. So just go about your lives, people. Nothing to see here. And it's nice to make those distinctions, right?
No, it's not that complicated yet.
Right, and so it does talk about the CoCoTALK is a show you can see Saturdays at 2 p.m. It has the link to our website, how to email me, how to see some videos, and then talks about the CoCo links page that I've been working on, all these resources, which is imacoconut.com, and it kind of gets into saying what the show is all about. And I kind of gave him a brief version of what it was. And then we also got somebody else put in a note here, which I thought was, I think it was Mark Overholser, that said right here from the CoCo mailing list. It says, attending a CoCoTALK stream is like going to a weekly user group meeting. It says you even have special guests and luminaries and former and current software developers and etc. and presentations from members working on their projects. So yeah, it is kind of like a user group, or it's like a club. It's, we're getting together, or some people would even say we're maybe possibly something like The View. So so it is, it's a bunch of people here yentering it up here, a bunch of cackling hens talking about whatever, and we've never. Go ahead, John.
Don't be hating.
Don't be hating. And we've never ever taken anything too far. Everything has always been concise and well structured,
well planned.
You want to reclassify
that? Floppy talk.
So the length of the show is definitely based on the fact that there's no real plan for it.
Yes, yeah. The way I like to say, this is well-managed chaos, and or slightly managed chaos is probably.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't know about the well-managed part.
Yeah, slightly managed chaos, and it's definitely a train wreck waiting to happen. And so far, the train has managed to stay on the rails most of the time until we start going down the OS9 path. But
if we grow some, maybe. Bill Gates would come and talk about how he did the basic interpreter for our machine.
That would be interesting, right?
Wouldn't that be cool?
Fascinating talk there, I'm sure.
That would be great to get him to verbally say, use the ROMs and release the emulation. If you release it, they will build, or something.
If we did ever manage to do that, I'd like to get Eric Gavrelek on the same one, because he had a good story that he told in Nick's book when Nick interviewed him back in 1999, when Bill Gates wanted in the office and they were working on the original Paint program for Windows. And Eric was complaining how slow it was for all the Windows guys, and they didn't believe him. So he brought in ColorMax Deluxe on his CoCo 3 and brought it in the office, and Bill wandered by, and they started talking about some of the ROM routines that Bill wrote.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that would be an interesting story.
Being as Bill Gates is famous for being a philanthropist and donating to all kinds of various things and doing public works, if we could actually manage to get a hold of the guy or get his attention, there's a good chance that he probably would release the ROMs. It's just getting a hold of him is, well nigh impossible.
Right,
well, if he's watching this, why don't we just invite him now?
Yeah, Bill, come on in. This almost sounds like a Brother Jeremy song needs to be written. Oh, Bill, why don't you set the ROMs free?
You guys do realize that Bill no longer really runs the company?
Oh, yeah.
But he's got time to...
He's twice removed.
Yeah, but I think that probably he would have maybe enough influence and contacts there to have a good chance to make it happen.
Sure.
You know how some of us, when we get older, we get nostalgic about our computers?
No, I have no idea.
He would feel the same way. Maybe.
Yeah.
You never know. They say wish in one hand and...
Never hurts to ask. I think that's the motto.
Yeah, never hurts to ask. Yeah.
Well, you guys do know basically that it was the PC that kind of ended the life of the color computer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Tandy.
I don't know. It had help.
Do we really want to dwell on that?
I actually do know a story where it got extended another 2 years because of a little rivalry between the two, and it had to do with the guys were kept on saying our PC line produces better computers, they can do more stuff, and everything looks better on theirs. So the guys from the CoCo division set up one of their machines with the identical same program on the CoCo as on their machine, and had the guys come in. The guys go, yes, look at Rampage here. Doesn't it look so much better on the PC? It's got the great colors. It looks like the arcade. And then the guy showed him the cable was connected to the CoCo, and the crappy version was the one running on the PC. That got the CoCo another 2 years.
Wow.
Because they were about ready to cancel the CoCo at that time.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Ultimately, though, I think it was not the IBM but Tandy's own internal, I think, competition between those two departments. Tandy just, they decided that they wanted to concentrate on their IBM compatible line.
Well, that's what I just said.
Yeah,
it was their PC line. Well, the other thing too is Radio Shack stores were small, and you only had so much shelf space, and you were putting CoCo games up there that were $30, and then you had word processors that were $100, $200, $300 taking the same amount of space, about the same amount of space. Well, they kept on looking at that same shelf space. We could sell 3 times, 4 times the price on the PC line. And that's eventually what killed the CoCo.
Yeah.
Well, didn't freeware help that too?
Freeware on the PC side or the CoCo side?
Yeah, PC side.
Yeah, there was plenty of freeware on the PC side as well as on the CoCo side. So
sure.
Yeah, well, they didn't make their money off of freeware, so that didn't matter to them. What they wanted to do is sell hardware, and software just supported the hardware sales.
Well, when I got my PC, the biggest thing I was excited about was being able to get free programs that did stuff, and it seemed like anything you wanted to do, you can imagine, just go out there and look for something that did what you wanted it to do, and you can get an application to do it for free.
Mm-hmm. And it wasn't long before a lot of those free programs were bringing along other software that would masquerade basically, to try and make a business model out of it. And then, of course, we had malware creeping in, too.
Yeah.
I think by 1988, anyone who had an 8-bit computer for sale was thinking of getting out. It was the era of the 16-bit, and 32-bit was round the corner. So why would you keep selling an 8-bit computer?
Well, it was also the video games with their 8/16-bit wars that also affected the PC industry, or the what I would call the personal computer industry, not the IBM personal industry. Right. Because people started thinking about 8-bit, 16-bit, and eventually 32 and 64-bit. More bits had to be better.
Yeah, more is more.
No, I think though what ultimately killed the 8-bit competing platforms was not that they were 8-bit, because they could have been extended to, or expanded, upgraded, etc. But around that time, the IBM PC was out, and it was a standard platform, and there were multiple companies producing it, and they were compatible with each other. And that intercompatibility is what killed all these little competing, different variants of, computers that were not compatible with each other.
Well, the thing about the Tandy computers when they first came out with their, the 2000, the 1000, stuff like that, they had compatible on the operating system level, but not on the BIOS. It took companies like Compaq to make the black box BIOS that was compatible, and then everybody just bought those.
Well, also the fact that IBM accidentally made the ISA architecture to be open standard, and then they tried to capture it back when they switched over to the PS2.
Actually, it wasn't a mistake. They purposely planned to use off-the-shelf components because they had such a fast development cycle they had to do.
Yeah, I meant more from a marketing and sales, because they ended up losing the market because they did make it open. But yeah, at the beginning it was an advantage.
But IBM never sold that many computers on a given computer line because they were used to selling their mainframe computers and like that. And so if they had a few hundred sales in a month, that was extremely great business. They didn't think personal computers were going to sell that much, so they did everything on the cheap. They got the stuff out. There's a great documentary on the facility, I think that was in Florida, that built the machine because they wanted to be away from corporate IBM. And it's
near me.
Yeah, incredible what came out of there as far as how quickly. Because usually an IBM computer took about 4 years to design and build.
My favorite comment from the IBM development cycle was the infamous comment, nobody will ever need more than 640K of memory.
Right. All right, well, have we beat this episode to death? Because I feel beaten. I think this is a good, I think this has been a good episode. We are running a little short this week. We haven't quite hit the 3-hour mark, so this is kind of... this is a short episode this week.
The viewers will thank you.
You're one of those people that were complaining about the length.
The two that are left.
Well, most of the podcasts I work on are usually around 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah. So it's always the balancing act to let the conversation flow, but also try to not let the flow flow too much. So we'll get there.
But anyway, so talk to you later.
All right, hey Simon, thanks for joining us. So John Linville, thanks for being here today. For the whole show, we are really excited about Tandy Assembly. Looking forward to being there next weekend. and all that good stuff. And everybody else who's been here today, we've had Mark Overholser with us. Bill Noble has been here, been a little bit quiet. International podcast and internet celebrity David Ladd has graced us with his presence today. Ron Delvaux and Barry Nelson and Simon Jonassen, and I saw Benjamin in the background. Simon's son came in there. Nick Marentes, Ease of Use.
Ease of Use.
Yes, Jim Brain from Retro Innovations, another sponsor of Tandy Assembly. Jim, thanks for sponsoring. We're looking forward to seeing you next weekend too. And Curtis Boyle, Grant Leighty with his question of the week that sparked a very brief rebuttal of what platform should be used. Rick Adams is here, and Steve Bjork, thanks for stopping by as well with your input on Assembly too. And the words we will leave you with are going to be Tandy Assembly. Make sure you are there, and don't miss it. Be there or be square.
Yeah, I'm sorry I can't miss it. October is my busy season with all this haunt stuff.
Yes.
I'm afraid, unfortunately, I'm going to have to be a square, but I want to make it one of these years. Maybe we have it again next year, or the year after. I'll try to make one of these Tandy Assemblies. It does sound interesting.
Yeah, maybe we can carpool. You can join the ride with me and Mike Brandt.
Maybe next year we'll do Copenhagen.
What's really cool is after all these years of reading the Rainbow and being on the computer and seeing you guys' names being put out there, and then being able to talk to you or hear you talk and learn all this stuff is really cool.
Definitely.
Definitely, Ron.
Definitely.
Yeah, just getting to hear David Ladd speak about floppies. I mean, that has just made my life. So,
Curtis, no.
We're not. And listen,
replacement for the Rainbow magazine.
We're not allowed to make fun of David at least this episode.
Oh, I was being serious. There's no fun being made there. So,
what about David's floppies? What?
As a matter of fact, Curtis, it was all your fault. You planted that seed in his twisted mind to start seeing what he could do with.
Okay, that is true. That Curtis got me revitalized. Ooh, that
see how far down that rabbit hole.
He's on the floppy stuff.
I'm sorry, everyone.
I'm looking forward to cassette talk.
Cassette talk, isn't it? Listen, David, there's analog data on a cassette, David, so you can be passionate for that too.
Remember, it's like VGA
with modulation on those.
Yes.
Just don't talk about cassettes so much that we all get bawed.
Yeah.
I could spend I could spend 2 hours talking about trying to manufacture cassette tapes that would be reliable on almost every cassette player. I could spend 2 hours on it. It is the biggest bane I can remember from early days of CoCo and other systems.
Wow.
I do agree. I had a lot of problems with getting cassettes to write and then read back on different cassette players. These days, my solution to that is called an MP3.
And it works about every time.
Yeah.
I have books of cassette holders with cassettes in there from back in the day.
Yeah, they seem to hold up pretty well though, because I purchased a Color Computer Learning Lab, and those cassettes were in near pristine condition.
Yeah, I've still got a whole shelf of CoCo cassettes back over here. So
Michael Newman says, I lost many of a Daggerath save to an unreliable tape. That's got to be a terrible lesson to Bruce Moore says, cassette talk. No!
Yes, Bruce. We're going to start cassette talk.
You would not believe at Datasoft how many cassettes we would get back because the people's players in the process of playing and rewinding like that would actually stretch the tape.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yep, I've had that happen.
Or actually snap it if it was bad enough.
I do have one little cassette trick that I'm going to put out there for our modern computer users that are having to bootstrap their drive wire systems. I found that if you speed up, you double speed up the drive wire bin file that you're loading. If you're loading it, you don't have it on a ROM, you're loading it off a cassette. If you speed it up to twice speed and you poke the 65497, 0 and put the CoCo 3 in high speed mode, it loads it fine.
In half the time?
Yeah, because
half the time, which we're waiting for a drive-wire binary to load off of tape. That saves a bit of time there. Is to save it and then load it back in double speed. And it works. You get up and running in drive-wire if you don't have the ROM a lot quicker that way. If the bootstrap's set.
Hey, this show would be half speed.
Yeah, right. Double poke
if
it.
we
Right?
double clocked it. Yeah.
Double poke it. My computer club. They had a project where we came up with what we called a cassette modem, and it combined a speakerphone and a few cables that you plugged into your cassette port, and we were able to start a voice conversation over speakerphone, and one person would do a C save M, the other person would do a C load M, and we would push files over the phone line to them.
We did the same.
And we were able to do that at a faster speed than the typical 300 baud modem, because the cassette port was something like 1500 baud or something like that. Yeah, so that was our club project, and it was pretty cool to swap files over the phone,
Yeah, we did the same thing, Dwayne Downing and I. That's the way we first managed to see Donkey King running, because somebody in the club got it. Couldn't get over there because we were kids. We didn't have cars or anything, so they sent us a copy to try it out. We were just amazed.
Yeah, and we had a little toggle switch. So our phrase was, when we were getting ready to send, was "switches on now," right? So one person hit load, one person hit save. We'd say "switches on now." We'd flip the switch and hit enter, and boom, and just wait for the transmission to finish. It's kind of neat, peer-to-peer file sharing in the early days.
And Grant's apologizing for bringing that up in the chat, if you saw.
A cell phone too. We're using a cell phone in the mall on CompuServe was really awesome with those brick phones. That was interesting.
Did they work? Did they have like an analog input where you could plug a thing into them, or?
Yeah.
Neat.
We did it in 1986 or whatever it was.
That's impressive.
Awesome.
Now we've done it. We've created a virtual cassette talk segment. Oh no!
Well, this is going to lead into Tandy Assembly. There's a mobile computing display that Randy Kindig's going to have. You could have the Radio Shack suitcase phone plugged into a Model 100, and you could go anywhere and be online.
Did an IBM PC ever use a cassette?
Yes.
The original PCs had a cassette port. It was in.
Yep. The original 256K PC did. Yep.
Really? I don't know many people actually used it, but yeah, it was there.
Wow.
Also, another thing a lot of people don't know about the PC is that the original IBM PC ROM actually had BASIC built in. It was called Cassette BASIC. It's like one.
Oh yeah, with BASIC A.
Right. Well, BASIC A, if you look at the size of BASIC A compared to like GW BASIC, it's half the size. It's because GW BASIC has all of it in because it can't assume it's in the ROM, whereas BASIC A assumes that the BASIC C is in the PC.
Yeah, I remember that.
To the AT had BASIC and ROM. I worked in a lab that had PCs and XTs, so.
All right, well, we're going to have to save some of this data for another episode. So this has been a great CoCoTALK, and all we can say is Tandy Assembly, people. We are looking forward to Tandy Assembly. And we're going to wrap up this CoCoTALK. Thank you, everybody who was here live in the panel, and thank you, everybody who was in the live chat. So we had Retro Innovations in the live chat. Norlander was in the live chat. Evan Wright stopped by. Michael Newman's in the live chat still. Solstice is in the live chat. Ciaran was in there for a little while. Sixy was in there. Nick Marentes started off in the live chat. And have I missed anybody else? Wayne Campbell was in the live chat. And Jim Gary stopped by and said hello. I didn't even see that. Sorry, Jim, just seeing you here. Jim Gary's in the live chat, and I think that is most of the names that I haven't forgotten. So, yeah, thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you, everybody, for being here speaking. Next weekend, Tandy Assembly. All right, guys, we are going to wrap up this episode of CoCoTALK, and we thank you for watching. Tune in next week to the live stream at Tandy Assembly, and we'll see you then, people.
Retro.
Later all.
Good night.
Later.